Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third episode of the Pod of Exile, a Mobalytics podcast all about Path of Exile 2, specifically Path of Exile 2 Early Access. We are already 3 weeks into Path of Exile 2's first major patch, Dawn of the Hunt, and to say it was a polarizing release might be a bit of an understatement. From the mouths of Grinding Gear Games themselves, this was their rockiest launch of all time. Going all the way back to the earliest days of Path of Exile 1, looking at Expedition, looking at Lake of Kalandra. In the eyes of Jonathan, one of the founders, this was among the worst. So, we are here, hopefully, with some measured opinions and takes about this patch as a whole, everything introduced, everything that has been discussed to death the past 3 weeks, here to talk with each other about it all. And I'd like to remind you all, this is a podcast that is juiced by Mobalytics, and if you want any of our builds, any guides to the systems in the game, any deep dives into specific unique items, like one of the new chase items of the patch, the Deepest Tower, you can find all that under our names on Mobalytics for PoE2. So, you guys, I thought it would be great if we started just giving our 1,000-foot view of this patch and how we've experienced it so far. We don't need to deep dive into anything, just a surface level perception of, okay, this is how I see PoE2 at the moment. And let's start with, we started with Sirgog last time. Let's start with Dreamcore this time. What are your thoughts on the patch so far, man?
So I would say after all the small changes they made, all the fixes and things like that, they're definitely going in the right direction now. The release patch wasn't great. There was a lot of things wrong with it. And I think that in a lot of ways, it wasn't really a patch that people expected overall, in terms of like what was actually added to the game, right? Things weren't there that people were expecting. Things were there that people weren't expecting. But overall, you know, it's a 4-month patch. I think that it's been a little bit disappointing for some people, but I do think they're moving in the right direction now. You know, there's a lot of small change. They have reacted very positively to, you know, the Zizarin interview.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that whole discussion there, I know that it was very intense. You know, watching that was it was. I mean, from my perspective, it was actually quite entertaining watching that, because I think that in a lot of ways, a lot of the community were watching that interview and they were, you know, they were liking what they were saying, because in a way it was a bit of a wake up call for, you know, for Jonathan and for Mark and for just them in general, because there's a lot of these things that perhaps they knew about, or they kind of knew about them, but they didn't really have a good understanding of what exactly was the problem, right? So hearing it like just laid out for them like that was an important thing. And they've reacted very well to it. Like within days, they were making important changes. Some of those changes should have been in the first patch. Like, for example, the bleeding stuff, right? Like how on earth did that? They knew about that back in January, but they just didn't do anything about it, right? So
Yeah.
I don't know how that sort of stuff, but still, they have made the changes. They've started to make those changes. So yeah. That's yeah. I mean, overall for me though, the patch is going in the right direction. I think there's a lot of endgame changes that they've made that were important and are good. And yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
Yeah, that's a great rundown. And that Zizarin interview, I think that's gonna be a famous one. And watching it live, I had to stop my stream because some people were reacting poorly to it, and I, like you, I watched it in full after again. That was entertaining and so productive. It was insane, like, to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Just to and to watch everybody's reactions just vividly. Oh, it was good.
Yeah, there was one moment in that interview where there was just complete silence for like 10 seconds because Jonathan and Mark were both thinking about how to answer this question, and I just burst out laughing. I was just like, you could cut it with a knife. Like, the tension was insane. It was crazy. I mean, obviously, in the first half of that interview, you could tell that Jonathan was very defensive. Like, some of the things that he was saying just didn't make any sense. There was at one point they were talking about defenses, and he basically said that because people like to build offensively, like that's why they give him all these tools to build offensively. But because there's not many people who like to build defenses, they don't bother with defenses, which just you could tell for sure right there that at that moment when he said that, he was not thinking straight. Like he was in full defense mode. Just yeah.
You think so? Okay. All right. Because I
hope so. But either way, Mark was there, and I think Mark definitely understood what was being said about defenses. And we already know what he feels about it with defenses in PoE1 because he's made some amazing changes there. But
yeah, it's so good. I went into the patch just full positivity mode because things were just so out of hand that you couldn't even have measured discussions on stream. If you even gave like a tiny bit of wiggle room for like level-headed discussion about the state of the game, it just spiraled so quickly. It just went into mayhem where people were just trying to like doom spiral or like make other people feel bad or just be angry. So I went into the league just I'm focusing on all the good stuff, all right? And then like if I have concerns, I'm writing it down on another screen. But I had to really just go full turtle mode and protective, just for my own mental health, man, because it was crazy. Everyone was just so emotional about it. And the thing is, the more I played, the more I've actually, and the more I've thought about it, I'm actually feeling more frustrated than I did at the start. Like at the start, I was actually just having fun and like playing the game and focusing on the good stuff, and then. Like the thing Dreamcore said about the defenses, which you're being quite generous about in like good faith. There were some answers in that were genuinely quite concerning and makes me think like, is this going to be the game I want it to be, or are these like are they still thinking about this, or was that said, without properly thinking about it? And yeah, I'm genuinely weirdly more worried than I was at the start of the league, even though I think the changes they have made are good. But I think there's some fundamental design things that I am extremely not on board with, and decisions being made that I don't understand. And I don't know if they are even able to be justified. And I just hope that those things are going to be addressed. And I would love to do that kind of sit down like Ziz did, but just have it on one or two topics. Just hyper focus. Today we're speaking about defenses. Today we're speaking about the tree. Instead of like those dev interviews they do, often they are done with different kinds of people, or they're very general, or the first question will be, tell us how you started at GGG. I don't care, not to be rude or anything. I've heard that story a bunch. I want to like get in the nitty-gritty of why is the passive tree like this, and do you actually think it's good, or are you actually going to make it better because it's not in a good state? Why are defenses like this? Why is the balance of like, why is crafting like this? So I'm like, the foundations are excellent. The balancing is extremely frustrating, especially in the end game.
Yeah, I think that's a sensible take too, Lolcohol. And I think your fear is, or your building frustration. I've felt that too more and more, right? And I've been playing a lot in private, and it's especially on like the item front, especially and we'll dive into this a little bit later, everybody watching, especially after like playing LE a little bit. And I have qualms with that game, but compared to PoE2, I spent 20 minutes yesterday on trade for PoE2, and I massively improved every single piece of gear that I have found in my entire 40 hours, 45 hours of playing so far in 20 minutes. And afterward, I just logged off. I felt really bad. I was like, well, that doesn't feel that great. Like, I just replaced everything I've ever done, But I think that'll come with time. I think, and that's one of the things that maybe we dive into this a little bit right now with you as well, Sirgog. I'm not leaving you out. I see you there. You're still, by the way, he's still, because his internet service provider is doing some work on his internet. So he's calling in on his phone right now. He's here with us, right, Gog?
I am, although I've just come back after, I think you might have seen in Discord chat, I was Hey, I missed half of what Lolcohol said towards the end there, but I am back again.
Fantastic. All right. I knew he was here. I knew he was gone. I knew he was gone. I knew he was here now. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so I was meaning to say, grinding gear games, shockingly, right? They've been working on this game for a long time, right? They built Path of Exile 1, and they still, right now, have so many fundamental design decisions about their game not decided on, which is shocking to me. Is that shocking to you guys? Like, because that's what I'm hearing, Lolcohol. You're talking about defenses or like the passive skill tree. And I know it's early access, and I know that a lot is going to change and that they want feedback, but I'm still shocked that they don't have like the ability. You say have a one-on-one conversation about these specific topics. Will they have like a solid viewpoint, or is all this like moldable? Like is it set? Is any of it set in stone? Right? I don't know.
No. It's I don't believe it's set in stone. Oh, actually, wait. Let Dreamcore and Sirgog take it. There's a delivery here, and then I'll keep going. All right.
Go for it.
Going. I'll be
All right. Well,
Go for it,
here's
Sirgog.
like I think grinding gear games have made a couple of key mistakes early on in this. The first one is committing to not nerfing things mid-league. In early access, it's essential to be able to nerf things. That's how we got 3 months of Archmage, and as a result, no one knowing what the proper power level should be going into 0-2-0. So grinding gear games are like, okay, we just giga nerf everything, and then we'll slowly buff things back to where they were. They really need to repeal that. And honestly, if they don't repeal that, we're not going to nerf things mid-league. It's questionable whether 0-3-0 is going to be worth playing. I think I go that far. The second thing I think they've gotten really wrong, and I was thinking about this when we were discussing what we should talk about in this podcast. I think their big mistake was opening up all map tiers early. I think that's the single biggest mistake they've made.
What do you mean by that?
So if they'd started the game with map tier 10 being the top, Waystone tier 10, being the top tier, then that would mean that they could get a feel for how tough things actually are, how powerful players actually are, and then they could balance 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 accordingly. But because they've already gone and thrown in everything up to 16, you get to this point where players are used to blitzing 16s from 0-1-0, and the idea that you might face a little bit of resistance in 13s is just it's not in line with players' expectations. So I think now their only real way of bailing out of this mess they've put themselves in is by adding new map tiers going beyond the 16 tiers that we've got now, and then have it so that up to and including 15, 16 can be blitzed. But that's sort of not where you want to be, having that much power creep early on. But yeah, I don't know. I know what they can do really to fix that, but that was a big mistake, I reckon.
Yeah.
I know how. I assume you're talking about like the end game was a little bit harder this time around, and people were hitting struggle points earlier than previously, right? Is that the TLDR?
Correct. Yeah, because
Okay, the solution
day one was much easier.
Yeah. So the problem currently is that there are not enough tools to solve problems, and there is not enough player agency to tackle those problems, even if there is a solution. So currently players are forced to either grind like crazy or resort to the trade site. I feel there's very few I don't want to say deterministic, but clear pathways to solving problems or improving your build other than grinding, hoping for a drop, making that sale, going on the trade site and buying what you need. And then even that's like best case scenario. Worst case scenario is I keep dying, and like the mitigation layer that I need doesn't exist in the game, or I need to scale my HP. I cannot scale it any further. There's no percent life on the tree. There's none of this. Okay, what do? Go ES. And that's like that is frustrating, man. I don't mind struggling if there is a clear pathway to overcoming that struggle. The frustration comes when it's like I'm struggling and there's like nothing I can do about it, or I have to go ES because that's the only solution. That's when I'm like, I kind of don't want to play anymore.
Yeah,
Right?
that's again. So just like the bleeding change, like how did they not address life and armor in this patch? Like what's going on there? I don't know. They made a lot of balance
they should have
changes.
done
A lot of them
attention
we didn't even
facility
know
on armor.
about, right? That's another thing we can talk about is the fact that we didn't know about any of the major balance patches, like any of the major balance changes, sorry, like to skill gems before the patch even started. Like we didn't have that time to plan any builds or anything like that. We just went into the game. We had the data mined gems to look at, and that was about it. Like one day before or not even a day.
Now, why
Right,
do you
and
think
that's
that was? Do you think that was to
here's
stop
the thing, though. Like,
wildfire?
a lot of those
or-
balance changes were
Yeah.
coming in very, very late. We even heard that from
Yeah.
GGG. This was
Right.
like in the Ziggy D interview. They said that those changes were coming in like constantly. So those changes were not being tested, and
Right.
we immediately recognized that those changes weren't being tested because all of those balance changes affected the campaign in a big way, and the campaign felt terrible as a result. So, and that was the real big point of this patch, right? Was the campaign, because if you take all of the other things, like a lot of it is just they've been fixing minor things, but they had to make some emergency patches to the campaign because it was just they had completely skewed the progressions of the campaign. It was like, I remember watching that Crib video where he's just like complete glass cannon minion build, and his minions are taking like 10 hits to kill like those Faradin infantry,
Oh god.
like white mobs. They would just walk towards him. The minions are just like punching 10 times for one of those white monsters to die. I mean, that is just what has happened there, right? That's something seriously wrong has happened there, So I don't know that. I think that is one of the things they were trying to get tons of stuff in. None of it was tested, right? And they were making mistakes along the way, but all of those things were kind of piling up. And if it's not being tested, then I mean, Jonathan talks about that. He does a run every day, right? He goes home, plays the game through like the early stages. That should have been something that was picked up, but they couldn't pick it up because they were making all of those changes on the fly right before the patch.
So we've been seeing, right? We got three balance patches, essentially 3 or 4 that have already come into the game. And Sirgog, I know you mentioned that they decided not to do mid-league nerfs. Do you think this approach of, seasons of buffs, right? Multiple buffs happening, as I think they said in one of the interviews, is an okay approach where they're actually going to be changing the game throughout these patches and not waiting until, I don't know, it's probably going to be, August or something until the next major balance patch?
Well, the way that I think about it is this, right? There is a point where there is a player power point where the game is the most fun. You might say that's 7 out of 10 power, just for argument's sake. If you've got a build that's 9 out of 10 power, then it's going to completely distort the entire league economy around it. That was the case with Archmage. That was the case with Trample Toe builds in 0-1-0. What Grinding Games have done, they've recognised how bad it is when you've got a 9 out of 10 build. So they've gone and nerfed everything preemptively, bringing everything down to 5. And then they've launched 0-2-0 at that point. And then actually at 5, characters are a bit less powerful. Now, some people like that, some people don't. But it ends up, this is the bind they're in. What they should be doing is aiming to get everything at 7, stuffing some of them up and hitting 6.5. Those ones you might buff, stuffing some of them up and hitting 7.5 or even 8 or even 8.5, and those ones you try and nerf a little bit. And that way you could do that if you're willing to have a nerf patch. But when you're not willing to have a nerf patch mid-league, then you just have to aim under. You have to, because it's worse to get something overpowered. It's like we've got now with Lightning Spear is like 50% of the league. Partly that's shiny and new, but mostly it's because Lightning Spear was a serviceable skill, then they gave it 26% more power. And that's basically an entire support gem.
Why? Tell me, somebody. Why?
It should have got 20% more speed, 15% less damage, and instead it got 5% more damage, and it still would have been fine. 20% more speed would have made it feel more fluid. 15% less damage, it still would have been just as good. But instead, they went and they basically killed every other build close to it.
That was
by
a
buffing
shocking
something
one.
else past.
Yeah. That was a shocking change to me. Because at that point...
The build diversity in this league is actually worse than 0.1, unironically.
That's a great one to start with.
There's like 55% of builds that are just all playing the same setup. All of them are Lightning Spear, Amazons, right?
So that's a great topic to start with. It's just skill balance in general. Everybody here, I don't know how many characters you guys have each played or what skills you've played, but what are you guys playing right now? What have you kind of settled on or ended the league on? I know some people have stopped playing for the time being. Are we all Lightning Spear enjoyers, or we play? Of course not, you hipster. Dream, what are you playing?
So I played. Right now, I was playing a grenade character. I was doing some grenades, just testing out, seeing what they feel like.
Yeah.
And I've also, I played through at the start. I was playing a tactician build with Twister, and looking at the projectile skills for the spear, which was, I mean, Twister was bugged at the start of the league. For anyone who doesn't know, it was probably dealing about 10 times as much damage as it should have been dealing overall.
Yeah.
Which was just completely ridiculous, and that made as soon as I switched to like the proper Twister setup towards like the end of Act 2, I just deleted everything. Like, I mean, you got the clips of like Lolcohol was playing a similar build to me, just one-shotting every boss, So after they nerfed that, the build was obviously considerably weaker, but it was still fully serviceable, and I progressed very quickly to tier 15 maps on that build. It was very strong. And then I switched. I kind of got a bit. So the play style of Twister is a little bit weird in that it's very, very, very strong in enclosed areas. Like if you're playing like Ritual, is crazy. You play Ritual, you just insta give everything in the Ritual. Like every time you click the Ritual, because the Twisters bounce around the Ritual like the walls, right? So that's really strong. And some of the enclosed maps are very, very powerful as well. But some of the open maps, Twister just really doesn't feel good. You have your Twisters just disappear, right? They just never come back because the map's so big. So I switched off of that, and I was playing some. I tested out grenades a bit because I know that they got buffed up. But right now, I've literally just started a fresh playthrough of SSF because I think I want to kind of see what that feels like now they've made the changes. I haven't heard great things about it, so I'm not that confident it's going to feel very good. But yeah, so I haven't played any Lightning Spear stuff, even though I have messed around with a lot of the other projectiles like Explosive Spear and stuff like that.
Okay, so we have a little bit of diversity here. Lolcohol.
A tiny bit. Yeah, I'm doing Twisters, and I was just about to swap over to Lightning Spear, pretty much for the exact reasons that Dreamcore stated, which is that the build, when I did Arbiter on that build, it was basically non-functional because the arena is too big for it to like bounce. So I was gonna swap to Lightning Spear, and then last Epoch happened. So I haven't done that swap yet. I also I don't know if I'm that motivated to even go back to that character and do Lightning Spear. I think I'm more interested in maybe doing like campaign stuff. But yeah, I feel like there's probably more builds than people realize, but I don't know.
They aggregate though. They go to the mean,
There is a lot of builds. There is always a lot of builds in PoE. It's the same in PoE1, right? But in PoE1, like I think Sirgog said this in the first podcast that we did, a while back. Like if you're playing melee in PoE1, you're playing Lightning Strike pretty much 95% of the time, because why wouldn't you, right? It's just you can't really play another strike skill because even though they look different and they kind of sometimes feel a little bit different, it's just inferior in almost every way, which is kind of how Lightning Spear feels like right now. Like if you're just playing a similar build that's not Lightning Spear, you're just making a mistake, which is really, really, really unfortunate. And that goes back to them they should be nerfing things, right? Because they can nerf that build without removing those players, right? I know that some people will quit the game when they get nerfed, all right? Make no mistake about it, that's going to happen. People are going to be like, right, they're nerfing me, I'm done. But I think a lot of people will, cut the power back 20%, 25%, and a lot of people will realize, okay, this build's been nerfed, but it's still fully functional. It's still, it still works just fine. I'm still able to progress. I'm still able to kill bosses, things like that. Like that's what they should be doing. They don't need to completely remove. They can nerf it big time towards the end of the league, like when they move into the next big release. But doing those like rolling nerfs in a league is a good idea, and buffs, right? Bringing things up, because then you get people playing those things. You get more testing, right? You get things actually. You get different bugs ironed out and stuff like that, and it ends up with a smoother progression of the game, just getting better and better. I think we discussed this as well. How if you only have these one giant patch every sort of 3-4 months, you're definitely stunting the growth of the game. Like it's going to be a lot slower to actually get to that final destination, because you're like constantly moving the marker, right? You're like, okay, we're going to bring the power level down across the board by 40%, but they don't really realize that this thing is now completely broken, because they can't possibly realize that, because no one's actually tested it. No one's tested it because in the previous patch, this other thing was 60% stronger and everyone was playing that instead, right? So that's...
I'm really imagining the best approach would be to do something like, have you guys, I think you guys have played like Dota 2? Anybody here?
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah, right.
I
know the ice frog?
What? Of their idea, the approach. Yep,
you
I have not.
Okay, well, you need to get on that, Sirgog. You might be lost for a while though, if you start playing it. I'm done. I haven't played in like 3 years, but I have more hours in that game than Path of Exile by probably a factor of like 2 or 3. I think stupid amount of hours in that game. The way they did their patches, like, and I'm not talking about the big balance patches, right? The 7.36 or whatever. No, not any of that. They would have A, B, C, D, E, F patches where they're literally like, the armor on this hero increases by 2. Oh, the base attack time of this hero is decreased by 0.15. Like all these like constant minor, and I know you're laughing at it. They made a difference. Are you like thinking of the meme, like the armor?
I remember
meme?
the meme. Like I think it was Abaddon, right? They got buffed by like 1 armor, like just constantly. Plus 1 armor.
Yeah, I think it's a Wind Ranger and Doom keeps getting like +1 armor, and it's like, oh my god, I can't do any damage. Yeah. See, I'm thinking of that sort of like style of changes that they seem to not really want to do that though with a lot of skills. Like even with these buff patches that have come out, they only really focused on like lightning spear. Like they didn't touch any of the other like spear skills, which is weird. Where's my Fangs of Frost buffs? Come on, I want Fangs of Frost to work really bad.
Yeah.
I feel like that style of just minor tweaks constantly, and if nobody's playing it, okay, well, you know what? Increase damage by 5%. Okay, maybe the base attack time is also increased by like just minor buffs all throughout the league until it hits that threshold where people, oh wow, this is a good skill. I'm gonna try it out. I'm gonna give it a go, and maybe it ends up being really fun and powerful. And I don't know. I think that'd be cooler than what they're doing now, or more entertaining and more productive.
That sometimes happens is that you get a skill that's just like that just feels satisfying. And here I'm thinking Path of Exile 1's Smite of Divine Judgment. This is a bad skill in terms of like I took it to Uber Cortex in Path of Exile 1. But that was on gear that could just smash, much harder Ubers like double Uber Elder if I was playing Lightning Strike. But I took it there, and the thing was, it was a fun play style. I liked the skill. The problem was that you just feel a few percent behind. But if they kept giving it a few percent at various times, it would have gotten over the threshold where suddenly you don't feel like you're crushingly behind someone that's playing the meta skill. You feel like you're able to play something, and it's like you can run the same content. Maybe you take 170 seconds a map instead of 155, but that's okay.
Yeah. And also like all the combo skills need to be like, so you need to be really, really, really rewarded for doing that. Like Twister was in a cool spot because it was like a setup and payoff, but it gets to the point where it's just that setup is not worth the time compared to something like Lightning Strike, which is just front-loaded damage. And I feel like a lot of the balance also comes down to design decisions and the passive tree. I don't want to go off too much on a tangent, but I feel like
Mhm.
so many skills and so much of the tree is conditional. It's like if you have frenzy charges or power charges, this skill is now cool. Like it sucks, but now it's cool if you have charges. And then like the tree is if you've done this in the last X seconds, then this happens. Like there's so much of that. If you've parried recently, then this does more damage. If you have a frenzy charge, this skill is functional. Like make the skills fun to play. I think a good one is what's the Falling Thunder?
Yeah.
Like
Power charge.
make Falling Thunder just work the way it does with power charges, and then like with power charges, make it cooler, or even like have it consume. It's like the baseline is crap, and
Yeah,
then if
that's
you do
actually a
all the
really big design
things,
problem.
yeah, if you do all the things, then you get the power. And like this, they kind of alluded to this when I forget which interview it was, but Jonathan talking about like watching people playing the Huntress, and they were, like he didn't quite say it, but said like they're playing it wrong, quote unquote. I that is like that freaked me out to hear, because I don't think you should be designing a class, skills, tree, anything that is so conditional that there is a right way to play it and a wrong way to play it. And if you play it the wrong way, you're punished for it and it doesn't function properly. Make the tools, have them interchangeable, and allow players to experiment, do crazy stuff, and have it so it functions. Not like, Huntress feels bad because you weren't using parry and disengage. Like, dude, I don't want to use parry and disengage. Make the stuff good so that it still
think it's
feels fun
fine, though, if
without that.
Like, if we
Yeah.
have 36 ascendancies and 12 classes, I think it's fine to have some that are super niche. The problem
Some,
then
yes.
is that if you release an expansion that focuses on something super niche, like the day one playstyle of the spear, then that's going to disappoint people that aren't interested in that niche.
Yeah, but it needs to be some stuff, not most things. If you look at the Huntress tree, like the tree feels so sparse and the power is so. I think this is actually, I'm going to do a video on this, but one of the major problems currently is there's a huge power imbalance where players are getting power, especially during the campaign right now, is very imbalanced. So tree, I would say probably you break
Agree.
it down into like tree, skills and supports, and then items, right? Currently, your items are where the vast majority of your power is coming from, especially your weapon in the campaign, and then like your tree and your skills and support. That's secondary. And at the same time, players, there is practically no agency, no determinism. So one player's campaign experience can be completely different to another player's based on their RNG. Because if you're not getting enough power from your tree and your gems, and you get unlucky with your itemization, or if you're just not diligent enough to be doing all the chores of like checking the vendor, salvaging, doing this, going to this place to get the guaranteed thing. Like, if you're not doing all that stuff, your campaign experience is like vastly different from someone who is doing that stuff. And I don't think the right way to play the game is to do a whole lot of chores so that you are the adequate level of power. I think your power level should be at the point where you can play the game and just keep playing the game and you're killing stuff. And then if you want to go above and beyond and, constantly check your vendors and salvage everything and put sockets in your stuff, then you're like mega powerful. Then you feel really strong. But it currently feels like you are just punished for playing the game incorrectly right now. And I think one of the biggest things that needs to happen is just like reworking the tree, reworking gems and support gems, and reworking player agency, because it's not there and it's incredibly frustrating. The moment you feel like you're at the mercy of RNG and you get unlucky, that's when you get pissed off, because you're like, The vendors aren't selling the thing I need. The currency isn't hitting. The drops aren't coming. Like, what must I do? What must I do? And like,
was it you, Lolcohol, or someone else that was telling me that they were doing campaign runs, trying to get a personal best time, and if the early vendors didn't have Magic Find gear, they would reset. They'd start a new
That
run.
was
Sarge, right?
Sarge, yeah.
Yeah, Sarge. So it is literally like that. It's you are at the mercy of RNG, and this is one of the most frustrating things is that it feels like they are so scared to give players anything, and I don't know why. I guess I do know why. If you go overboard, you end up with Diablo 3 where you're giving players too much and then they quit after 2 days because they've got everything. But I feel like this is the other side of that spectrum where you are like so stingy with everything. Stingy with like crafting currencies, like stingy with crafting mechanics, stingy with like odds on recombinators and like functionality of things that make the game more fun to play. Why?
I think
Why?
the thing is
wanna go
that you
back to
can't
that.
take that stuff away.
You can't
And,
take
like,
that stuff away.
You can't take that. They're afraid to take that stuff away because of backlashes in the past in Path of Exile 1. Like, remember when they removed Harvest after Harvest was like a mirror printing facility for the top 0.1% and was completely out of reach of most people to use in any meaningful way. I remember the horror that was buying 34 remove ad chaoses, and that was in 3.11, so the most powerful Harvest ever was. And yeah, I remember just sitting there in TFT buying these things that were cheap, but it was just such a miserable experience. And this was how you crafted your gear. The thing is, they then have to decide, are we designing, like, taking again 3.11 Path of Exile 1, do we design endgame content for the person that has done that chore of sitting in TFT and powering up every single piece of gear they've got? Or do we design it for everyone else? And the wider that you make that gulf, the less content can be used to please both groups of players. That's the problem if they power players up too much, because lots of people aren't going to find these power-ups. I think what they need to do is focus on raising the floor of character power somehow. So making it so that if you haven't got a 125 PDPS weapon by the time you're meant to have one, that you have an easy way of getting one. And guess what? Path of Exile 1 had that solved a long time ago, and it's called vendor recipes.
Yep, exactly. There were so many semi-deterministic or even entirely deterministic systems that existed that have just been taken out. You had vendor recipes, you had the crafting bench, you had essences, Reforge even. I mean, if you don't want to go as far as Reforge, these systems did exist as backup plans or even just things that you could do to power up your character. And a lot of what I've been hearing is, oh, but we can't. I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth, but it sort of feels like, oh, if we put that in the game, some people might not know about it, and then that's not good.
Show them.
Dude, either yes, show them, introduce it to them, or have stuff in the game where you are rewarded for knowing about it. Like that's
cool too.
Path of Exile. Path of Exile is knowledge. You are a better player if you know more stuff. So if you know the vendor recipe, you're rewarded. Like, why is this stuff? Why have they taken away all the the control? It's so frustrating.
I want to actually go back to a thing that Lolcohol was talking about before about the charges on skills, right?
Okay.
Because one of the big things that I find with the design of, and it's not just skills, but it's a lot of things in Path of Exile 2, it really does feel like that there's a system that's been designed to be played in one way and one way only. And there is like a restrictive feeling of the game is on rails. Like, it's just, for example, like, why is there, okay, so let's talk about the Herald skills, right? Like Herald of Ice, Herald of Lightning, I don't really mind them being tied to a martial weapon because they're designed as like attack type skills, like it deals attack damage, right? Why is Herald of Blood tied to a martial weapon, right? We have the Blood Mage in the game. They made it so spells can inflict bleeding. Why can't I play a bleed build with a wand, right? Or a scepter? Why why is it locked to martial weapon, right? What's going on there? And it's very similar to all of those huntress skills as well that they added. And I call them huntress skills. Obviously, anyone can use them, but it's like that. Here's a skill that deals mediocre damage if it's used without a charge, and it's been balanced in a way that really it's only useful if it actually consumes a charge, right? If it consumes a charge, then the skill is really good. So one of the best examples I can think of is Explosive Spear. Anyone who played around with the Explosive Spear in this patch, such a satisfying skill to use when you consume a frenzy charge. It is awesome. You just chuck it down, big explosion, big ignited ground, right? Everything on that patch just dead. If you use it without a charge, I'm just circling the mobs for like 3 seconds because I've got to wait for it to explode, right? And by the way, like, otherwise I need to predict where the mobs are running because it takes so long to explode and the mobs are too fast that they just move out of it, right? Now, that skill has been designed to use with the frenzy charge. That it's been designed in such a way that you do not want to use it without a frenzy charge. And therefore, you then need to find a way to gain a frenzy charge. And they've designed it in this very particular way where it's like, okay, you're meant to parry, get a frenzy charge, then you use this skill. But it's like, okay, parry just doesn't work in this game, by the way. Like, it literally cannot work in a game where you're getting surrounded by monsters. Like, I can't just stand there and parry. I'm just dead. Okay, that's just what's going to happen. And while we're on the topic of parry, by the way, because I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, why can I not use shield skills with a buckler? Why can't I use shield charge? Why can't I use resonating shield with a buckler? It's a shield. It has block. What is going on there? Like, what is the design of that?
I don't know. It falls into that, like, everything is restrictive and everything you have to play the right way with the right skills and the right this, and you're not allowed to. It's like a lot of you're not allowed to do that. And why? Why can you not use heralds with spells? Why? Like, what is the reasoning behind that? Let me do it. It's fun. I want to do it. And if it's too strong, then like make it, I don't know, 50% less effective.
I do think the weapon locked skills overall has been a massive step back from PoE1. I've got to say that.
Agreed.
Because even though there is this thing in PoE1, the reason why like whole weapon locking skills and things, a lot of it is balance based. Obviously, like we have Void Forge, we have Face Breakers, like a lot of the things that are the type of weapon locking over there is a balance thing rather than a flavor thing, right? Whereas it's like we've got these mace skills, big heavy hitting mace skills, you know what they were going for with those. But I do think they would benefit from blending them a little bit. Like, for example, let some of those heavy staff skills, right? Like the Falling Thunder, that kind of stuff. Why not let it be used with a mace, right? And bring some of those quarterstaff things over to the mace skills, right? Like some of those, just do a bit of mix and match and stuff like that. Like I don't think you necessarily need to have all of these things locked into one particular thing, because when you do it like that, what happens then is like every build of that particular weapon starts to look the same, right? Because they are so shoehorned into one thing. That's just it. Like, I mean, right now, if you're using a mace, you're pretty much always using the same skills. You know, you're using, well, at the moment, people are still using auto attack because it's still really good, sadly. And the other skills are not that great. But, you know, people are still going to be using Hammer of the Gods. They're going to be using Perfect Strike. It's just, you're just going to use, that's all you have. That's the options you have. You chose mace. I'm sorry. That's what you've got, right?
That's what you got. I agree, 100%.
I do like, though, that I like the fact that there is this actual reason to use weapons other than a couple of specific things. Like in Path of Exile 1, you use a specific unique weapon, you use Ephemeral Edge, so therefore you're on one-handed sword skills. Otherwise, it's pretty much you use a claw because claws are just better than everything else in general. And I think the fact that we've got more weapon lock skills is a good thing. I think they might have taken too much of a good thing, though, in PoE2. And I think the right happy medium for both games is probably in between both extremes. Probably somewhere where some skills can be used with every weapon group. Most skills can be used with one or two. but there's just a bunch of things in between. Just whatever makes thematic sense for the particular skill.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I'd like to see. Like, let's have Earthquake be used with a quarterstaff, right? Let's have a few of those skills that like would actually make sense thematically. Let's have them be used with different weapons. You don't have to do it with all of them. Like, for example, Hammer of the Gods, that stays as a mace skill. That is fundamentally a mace skill. It's literally a hammer, right? Let's just keep that as what it is. But let's just have some. Let's have some of those skills flipping over, and like, yeah, let me use shield charge with the buckler. Like, what's going on?
The two questions for you guys. One, assuming that they keep weapons locked to, or skills locked to specific weapons, do you think this problem fades away in, let's say, 2 years, 3 years, when every weapon has, I don't know, 40 plus skills? Or do you think it's always going to exist, as you guys kind of just hinted at, wherein you're always going to want to use some of these skills with multiple different weapons? Like, I love the Falling Thunder example. I love it.
Overwhelming number of skills if they get to that point. Like, how many skill gems are there in PoE 1 now? It's like 400 and something.
They have to, though, right? What are they going to do? Have they thought this far? Uh-oh.
They are going to keep adding skills, but the thing is, even if they add skills, you're still going to have the same problem of weapon type builds looking the same, because weapon type builds, how the game works is people gravitate to the best skills, and like you will see it in PoE 1, right? You will see, like, for example, Lightning Strike right now. You'll see a lot of ephemeral edge builds, right, using Lightning Strike. But you will also see other setups of Lightning Strike, but they're all still using that skill because it's good, and it's going to be the same in PoE 2, where these 4 mace skills are just, or 3 mace skills, whatever they are just better than the rest, and therefore those are the skills you gravitate towards and use as a mace build. Like, even if there's another 50 options that you could choose, that's just what happens, I'm afraid. That's how balance works. Most people want to play the strongest build. There are people that are hipsters.
Necessarily gets to that point. I don't think it needs to be, the balance needs to be that bad that there is a clear, unanimously identified, this skill is more than 10% better than anything else. Like in Path of Exile 1, we clearly have a situation, again, we'll go with attacks, weapon attacks, it's clearly Lightning Strike is head and shoulders above everything else. Just Lightning Strike without considering the Val version would be a high tier skill, like it'd be an A tier skill. And then it has a godly Val skill as well. Contrast that to something like Double Strike, which is probably a C tier skill but has an A tier Val skill. And then there's just not much else. But if Lightning Strike was really brought down a peg, let's say that Val Lightning Strike was entirely removed and Lightning Strike was given a 20% slower attack speed. That probably kills the skill. If it doesn't kill it, it's close. Then at that point, you suddenly have a whole bunch of skills that people would play. There's Frostblades, there's, trying to think what else would be solid tier at that point. Smite, probably, not on every weapon. Smite wants different weapons to everything else. You'd have, obviously, Bone Shatter's already somewhat playable. You'd have a whole bunch of other skills that would be in that Frostblades tier. I'm not talking Frostblades of Catabasis, that's another outlier as well. I'm talking classic Frostblades. So it is possible to have a situation where some people look at Frostblades and say, this is mathematically 3% worse than Smite, but it inflicts freeze, therefore I prefer it to Smite. And then another person can go and say, hey, I'm going to be playing Smite because Smite does more damage than Frostblades, therefore I think it's better. That's what I think we want to have, is a situation where players don't agree on what's best.
Yeah.
And players can't really work it out in a league. That is something that I think we could get to. And I think it is possible to have that even if we do have weapon lock skills forever in this game.
Here's the other thing. We're having this debate now, patch 1 of early access. Do you guys think this is just going to happen every single release until we get to full launch? And when I'm talking about 53% Lightning Spear, are 62% of people going to be playing Maul Druid or Maul Bear, in 0.9 because Druid's not coming anytime soon. I've accepted that. But like with this sort of addition coming to the game, where things are clearly not thoroughly tested, is all the balance talk kind of moot until we're in full release, or do you think they can get to a better state?
If they continue on this path to do one big release every 3 or 4 months and no nerfs in the mid-league, we will always have this 1 or 2 or 3 outliers that are just ridiculous compared to everything else. It will always be the case. They cannot possibly... They don't have any way of testing the game like we do. We have mass scale testing that happens in the first few days of the league. There's a crazy amount of players logging in, right? And the sort of people who play the most and you know already know how the game works and things like that, they will find those broken builds within days, right? That's just how it works. And yes, this is going to happen every single patch. Like there will always be something which is unbelievably broken compared to everything else, because the game has too many moving parts, and they're not willing to do the small nerfs in the mid patch, which would definitely help them understand better what's going on in terms of like mechanical interactions and how busted things get. Right, that's because that's what's going on. Usually, it's a case of here's something which is kind of weak, and now it's really strong, and suddenly there's all of these things that are like stacking on top of each other to make this build ridiculous. But they couldn't possibly understand that in the previous patch because nobody tested that build. Nobody tested that skill because it was bad, right? It was so unbelievably... Like, I'll give an example. Like, this is not a very good example for this patch, but there's a skill called Siege Cascade in PoE2, right? And in the last patch, it was dealing 50% more damage to immobilized enemies. In this patch, it's dealing 200% more damage to immobilized enemies. There's an example of that skill just wasn't tested, right? Now it's dealing ridiculous amounts more damage. It also has higher base damage in this patch as well, by the way, so it's even more of a multiplier than that. But that's just an example right there of this skill was so unbelievably undertuned, and it's still not even, like, compared to other crossbow skills, it's still pretty weak, actually. The other ones are still much better than it. So that's just a good example there of they can't possibly be testing these things very well because that thing was so unbelievably undertuned, right, that it needed a gigantic buff to even get it remotely close to everything else.
Yeah. Man, I really hope that they can power through people getting upset about nerfs, and because I think it's just good for the game, and I think it's good for a lot of the players who are just playing the game and not necessarily like angry about nerfs online. It seems like they're willing to shift some of their design decisions, obviously after that Ziz interview, all the things that they've changed so far. I hope that's one thing they reverse course on, right? I know that they came out and said, we're definitely not going to do it, but I think if they nerfed Lightning Spear next week, even though I'm playing Lightning Spear, I'd be happy about that. You know, buffed up some other skills. Fangs of Frost. I'm gonna keep shouting that out. By the way, apparently that's the skill that Jonathan used in his playthrough for Huntress, like his latest playthrough, which is shocking to me. Do you guys also know? So, okay, I'll complain. I'll complain about something.
Yeah.
Okay, with Fangs of Frost, I think it's only Fangs of Frost. Maybe there are others. You don't use a frenzy charge to detonate its special thing. You need the enemy to be parried. So it's like the parry charge, right? And then there's a big frost nova that occurs. Why is it the only one that needs you to parry something? What is this? Like,
also, that one is just, I'm sorry, that's just ridiculous. Like, why is there a skill that only works after after a parry? Like,
I don't know. I gotta
think
complain
about it, right?
Because
What
I love
kind of
it.
bunch of skills use both mechanics?
If it would use, that'd be great. But you have to parry. And originally, like in Act 1, I was like, oh, this is cool. And then I get to Act 2, and I'm like, no. And then I get to Act 3, in the very first area where you're getting swarmed by bugs and zombies, and I'm like, I can't parry it. I'm done. I gotta swap out of the skill. Like,
yeah,
it's such a cool
Parry
skill.
doesn't work in that context.
No,
it just
not
doesn't.
at all.
It just does. As soon as you get deeper into the game, parry does not work. It's very similar to active block, right? Active block.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very cool idea. Doesn't
Yes.
work in Path of Exile. Does not work. Like
Right.
you. Okay, if I'm playing like Elden Ring, I can imagine like holding up my shield. Yeah, damn, that's gonna work like all game, right? I'm fighting like 2 monsters at a time. Like that's great. When I'm in the middle of a map and I'm getting like owned by monsters left, right, they're behind me. I'm just getting charged by like there's some quadrillas jumping on me. There's those like porcupine crabs firing stuff at me from the front. This active block thing or parry does not work.
No, it doesn't.
And also the way how Jonathan talks about it is as if like it's the be all and end all. Like at the end of the day, I could use this in Act 1 and it would actually feel pretty good against some of these monsters. As soon as I start getting deeper and deeper into the game, this skill just doesn't do anything. Like there's not. By the time I've parried, and then used my follow-up skill, which is, benefiting from the parry, I could have thrown 3 lightning spears and killed the entire map, right?
Exactly.
What
I feel there's a lot of instances where I've been playing and I'm thinking, I don't want to speculate, but I think like, have they actually been in this scenario that I am in right now? Like they must have. But at the same time, so let's just say an example, like what you're talking about with parry. Someone who works on the game must have tried to use parry in the end game and gone, oh, this is non-functional, right? Or another example is with expedition crafting. Someone has to have tried to use that system and realize this is so bad that it might as well not even be in the game. And it's very confusing that I wonder, one, is this how it's supposed to be? Like, is this intentional? Or 2, have they not tested this? Or I don't know. There's so many things that are really confusing where you think like there's no way that they've played this and thought it was okay. Or either that or I'm
With
crazy
expedition, are
and
you
they
talking
do
about
think
the
that.
recombination though? Because
I'm talking
recombination
about
is
like
really strong. It's just it's
Yeah.
narrow.
Here we
People
go.
try and make it do things it's not meant, that it's not good
Oh.
at.
Yeah, I was more referring to like rog crafting, which is
Oh.
borderline
that's right.
useless, and also like recombinators. Yes, they are strong, but it is such a it's just such a yucky process. It's so tedious and chory that
Like
yeah.
recombinators, people try to make it to try and use them to make dream items. That's not what they're for. They're there
No.
for getting 2 excellent mods on the same item in bulk, so that you can then quad slam it. And
Again, which is that's I don't love that. Can I mean, I guess we're dipping our toes into crafting now, right?
Yeah.
So I guess one of the major problems with crafting right now is that there is no cross pollination with the different systems, or very little. And again, I don't know
recombination in essence is.
well, wait, what? That doesn't. Yeah, okay, you. That's one thing, but
Like you make your essence, you fail your greater essence slam, and then you
Yeah.
go, all right, well, I'll rescue the good mod. I'll rescue the premium mod on this by giving it a shot in the recombinator.
Yeah, no, for sure. I get that. But it comes down to you end up just doing a very, very tedious process where it's like gather a bajillion bases, try get the thing with the essence. So I think, for example, a system that I think would function better, right? Instead of having essences only function on normal and magic rarity items, you rather have your normal tier essence, which can be used on any rarity item, normal, magic, or rare. And then you have your greater one that does the same thing, but it adds, let's say, it has a higher chance to be a higher tier mod of that tag. Now, by doing that, you might say, oh, but now everyone's just going to essence slam for all their mods, right? But you could have it so that it adds an exclusive essence modifier. So while an item has an exclusive essence tier modifier, it cannot be affected by another essence, right? So by doing that, you immediately make a whole lot of other systems way more interesting, right? Because currently essence is you have to gather 5 million bases and then essence, slam, and then recombinate. If you can make it so it can be applied to rare items, you can now say you could fracture a mod and then essence spam for a second mod, or you could fracture a mod, recombinate, then essence, or you could have a fractured mod and then go for the essence or like chaos spam. All right. Well, the production value has taken a noticeable hit.
I'm trying to remember what topic we were on when
Craft, you guys were in the
Yeah.
depths of craft, talking about recombination, greater.
Oh, yeah.
These
Yeah,
things.
because all the combination work that's been, all the stuff's been figured out in the last week.
Yeah.
I want to pipe in and say, guys, I haven't even recombinated, and I haven't found a single greater essence my entire playthrough so far.
I had 2 during the axe greater essences,
Wow.
and that's without vialing any essences.
I don't think I don't think it even makes a difference, to be honest. I think essences are I don't want to say useless, but extremely niche, that even if you do find them, they have very limited use currently. I feel like, but if you could, what I was saying before is if you could apply them to a rare item to add an essence exclusive modifier, they immediately become so much more valuable. It makes ground loot matter more. It makes essences matter more. It makes chaos orbs matter more. It makes annuls matter. Makes fractures matter. It just like has this chaining effect. But having it so
Can I tell you what I want to see
restrictive-
that's related to that, but not
Yeah?
exactly the same? I
Tell
want
me.
to see an omen. This is the fire version of the omen, right? You could have the same for everything else. The next chaos orb you use is 4 times as likely to remove fire mods and 4 times as likely to add fire mods. So it can get you a fire mod, or if you've already got one, it can potentially replace it with, it's a non-deterministic remove add, a reasonably good chance of doing so, but it's not crazy deterministic either. It's not like the Omen of Whittling. This would be something I think would be in the, I guess, like 10 to the Divine range, and rarity-wise wouldn't need to be crazy rare, but wouldn't be common either.
Yeah, I like that. That kind of semi-gambly but some control. That I think is a good spot to be in versus what really feels like just it's leaning so heavily on the just get lucky side of things that yeah.
I do think that the powerful omens for crafting are still too rare.
Yep,
way too rare. We have the sort of like guaranteed omen now, which is actually really nice. I really liked that change a lot because I've had a lot of omens that I have used. But the very powerful crafting omens are still just far too rare, and those ones are still the ones that you really need to make to make like a good item become very good, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
I think
it's
they're
like
missing middle tier omens. That's what's missing.
Yes, I agree as well. Yeah, there's definitely like you have those really high end ones which are like, you may go from a 3 or 4 mod item to a 5 mod item, even a 6 mod item if you get really lucky. But yeah, going from 2 or 3 mod to 4 mod is what that's kind of is that what you're suggesting there? That's what I think we need.
Yeah.
Like something that kind of helps that transition there, because right now it feels like we have a lot of systems in the game to get 2 mods, right?
Yeah.
We have, for example,
essences,
you can
recombinators,
fracture, right? You
fracture.
fracture an item, you can chaos it until you got 2 mods, right? That's one option. You've got essences, you've got recombination, you've got the standard transmute, org, regal. That's potentially 3 mods, but you'd have to be really, really lucky. And so, yeah, that all of those ways are methods to actually start an item, and then it's going to the next step and the next step. And perhaps it is just the case that they really don't want this to be a thing, and they want to kind of balance around the power level of having 2 or 3 mods on an item rather than 5 or 6. But I think overall it would be nice if we had something, and like you said there, Sirgog, it doesn't need to be fully deterministic, right? It doesn't. There can be some ways to influence it so that it's in your favor.
Yeah. Well, I mean, currently the realization that needs to happen is that if you don't give players enough agency over their own gear, they are always going to default to the trade site where it is
Yeah.
just faster and easier to get what you want. If a crafting system is less horrible than sitting on the trade site, it is, in my opinion, a failure. So if you can say, oh, you can recombinate to get 2 good mods, if that involves me farming hundreds of bases, tons of essences, and then like keeping on going until I get what I want, if that is worse than sitting on the trade site, I'm gonna go to the trade site. I'm gonna go to the trade site every single time. And there has been no acknowledgement of this. I am fine with the trade site, but there are people who do not want to trade. Give those players the power to play the game that they want to play the way they want to play it without having to do the just most blatantly obvious thing of just trading, because that
So I
is
think
going to
this
happen
comes-
every time.
I think this masks the real problem, though. The real problem is that you're talking about 4 mod items, 4 good mod items, 5 good mod items. It's not the case that 4 mods make a good item. There's one make or break mod in the most important item slots. So basically, imagine you've got a set of boots that have every roll is top tier, and you've got flat energy shield, percentage energy shield, flat life, and you're playing a hybrid character, so that seems like it's okay. And you've got tri-elemental res. This is very high tier mods, looks like it's fantastic at first, but it's missing the one mod that boots have to have, and that's move speed. So it's basically all but unplayable, leaving aside the potential builds with Queen of the Forest or something. So there are too many of these. If the item doesn't have this mod, it's not an item. It's not loot at all. And plus to the level of gems is that in too many places.
Yeah, and plus the level of gems is still way too strong as a mod. It's So I don't really mind there being like a difference between the power of mods, but that is too much of a difference, right? So you have because right now the way the passive tree works is it's like they designed it so that it's this multiplying scaling with your gear. And so if you're gaining a bunch of spell damage from the passive tree, obviously a spell damage modifier on your weapon isn't going to be as impactful as gem levels. Like a massive gem level mod is ridiculous compared to increased spell damage. And so whilst both mods are very good, like the gem level mod is just absolutely absurdly strong compared to anything else.
Yeah, if you've got a wand with +5 to gem levels and every other mod on it is utter dumpster tier trash, and you compare this to a wand that doesn't have the +5 to gem levels, doesn't have any gem levels at all, but it's otherwise 6 perfect mods, you probably prefer the one that's only got one mod on it.
Yeah, exactly. It's that strong. I think Lance talked about this in his initial feedback video, and he said that he had like worked out roughly the gem level mod was equivalent to about 4.5 other mods, right? In terms of like its power level. 4.5 to 5 other mods, which is just absurd, right? That is insane. Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So that's something I'd like to see them address a little bit. I think the way they do that, obviously, it's a little bit difficult to get it perfect, and I do think it's fine if some mods are stronger than others, but at the moment it's too far out of whack. It's just these builds. The problem with that being like that is that these builds are basically non-functional without that weapon mod, and then when you have it, they're then fully functional and they're sometimes very, very powerful, right? But it's like you're relying on that one mod, and that I think that in a lot of ways that shouldn't be the case. Obviously, weapons are very similar. You need a lot of physical damage or a lot of flat added elemental or whatever before it becomes a thing. But yeah,
weapon itemization in general is just it's too dependent upon the highest tier rolls.
Yeah.
Here's what I would prefer. You have you baseline up the damage of all spells by 3 levels. So current 20 becomes the new 17, and you remove that mod from wands, but you give 0 to 100% as a different tiers. So you might have the first tier being 20 to 39%, 40 to 59% and so on, up to top tier includes 100%. This is the percentage chance that you get +1 gem level when you cast a spell without any additional mana cost. So it's like, okay, you get a high tier of that. It's like, say you roll 87% chance to get +1 gem level. That's a really good mod. Like, that's up there with maybe a second best tier percentage percentage damage added as extra fire. But it's also not something that invalidates the weapon by not being there.
I agree. Yeah, so it's like, I mean, that would be an interesting mod, like chance to roll gem levels on a cast of the spell.
Oh my! More RNG.
Yeah, like 80% chance for gem levels or whatever. That'd be an interesting mod. But either way, I do think right now gem level mod too impactful to those builds. Needs to be toned back a bit. Move some of that power onto like the core scaling of level 1 to 20 gems, and then make it so that the gem levels are less impactful, or make it so that those rolls on weapons are lower. So, for example, instead of getting 5 levels or 4 levels, you might get 3. And then, it is, in terms of the actual overall amount of power you gain from that mod, it's just lower compared to every other mod that's on the weapon or other things like, your passive tree and your jewels and things like that.
Yeah. Now, I've got a question for you guys from the common man, the common player, which is myself. I have relatively very few hours, I feel like, in Path of Exile 2 in this particular season. And I'm wondering if there is still a lower end crafting function available. Because I gotta say, you guys, Greater Essences have not participated. Expedition, I'm in tier 7 maps, and I think I've only found 2 expedition nodes so far. I have the tablet, right, from doing my first expedition, which was a very cool ad, getting a tablet of the League mechanic the first time you do it. Really like that. And I've found a few rituals every single time. It's the Omen of Exaltation, slam 2 mods instead of 1. I haven't really been able to engage with items that much. It's just orbs, which are very much lacking currently. And, whether that's just pure luck, whether there's something off about everything, I don't quite know. And I don't have access to any of these options. So I'm left with runes, right? That's what I use to craft my items. And I still think there's a lack of availability when it comes to having, I think Lolcohol, you said, any agency over my items, unless I find the hell out of the game or I get lucky. And just from my perspective, it feels bad. It feels so bad that I have, I led the chat with, everything is off trade, right? All my, literally a 1 exalt item was legions better than what I had. And especially now that I'm getting into tier 7 maps, I was hitting tier 5s and my resistances, terrible. Nothing over 10%. It was really bad. None of the items I had could solve the issue, because even with runes, filling up with runes, I wasn't getting over 10%, 15% res. And that's always the first thing I do in maps in PoE1. I sit down, I'm like, all right, let's juggle some 2 stone rings. Let's craft some stuff using the crafting. But let's make sure I'm a minimum 60, 65 res everything before I even start progressing. And I tried to do that in PoE2. Obviously, different game, but I just felt like when I sit down and I look at all my tools available, I have no tools, right?
Yeah,
and I didn't have any throughout the campaign. I didn't have any tool, and I didn't really need them throughout the campaign. I was pretty fine. I think I was a little lucky with my weapon, right? Which is the most important item when you're progressing. Early maps, I sat down, no tools. I needed them. And then tier 7s, I 100% needed tools. And I felt like I should have tools available. I worked my way up to tier 7 maps. I'm tier 5 Nexus. Still had no tools. And I finally said, okay, SSF, I'm gone. I'm going to trade. Because I feel like that is such a terrible design flaw that players.
That's the thing. That's actually People like to say that SSF is a game mode with like it's an optional thing. It's imposed difficulty. Whatever you can describe it as you want, but realistically, finding items and being able to craft items yourself should be like the core of this type of game. Like this is kind of the game loop ultimately. You're getting more powerful over time. If you hit a hurdle that you cannot possibly improve your gear, and by the way, there's actually a lot more factors going on there than just the gear. There's also other things like, for example, in PoE1, you can hang back and just grind XP, right? As you grind XP, you don't just gain passive skills, you also gain gem levels.
Yep.
In PoE2, you don't, okay? Because gem levels are tied to whatever tier of, whatever monster level you're doing. And you are going to be flatlined and stuck at that. So it is not just gear, but obviously gear is a really, really big one. And I think even if the game shouldn't be balanced completely around SSF, and it certainly shouldn't be balanced around hardcore, and I know we've had those discussions before, even though those game modes should be fully playable. Like, the idea that SSF should be something that they should essentially build the game around someone who... You can obtain this thing. It doesn't need to be easy to do. It doesn't have to be something that's really trivial, but there should never be a complete blockade of just... I'm stuck, and that's actually you're not alone on that. That is a feeling that I've heard from a lot of people. Even I've got some close friends that I play Path of Exile with. One of them is the person who actually got me into PoE1 in the first place. They just got stuck, right? They just got completely stuck in their gear progression. They play SSF. The other one plays SSF. We all usually play SSF. I haven't been playing SSF this league in PoE2 because I played it in early access and it was garbage. I'm sorry to say, it was complete and utter garbage, right? The experience of SSF was terrible. I saw the changes that they made this league and I said to myself, that's not enough. And I'm obviously now just starting an SSF playthrough. I'm going to experience it for myself and give it a test. But I know that feeling that you are just completely stuck. And there is, in a lot of ways there should be... They need to look at those things and kind of iron them out and have some ways for a character to actually make that transition, through the game. Because if it's the case that you have to go, because trading in this game is absolute trash. It is so bad. Like, just messaging like 15 people off the trade site. One of them eventually answers and you get your trade, right? Most people are not interested in trading for one exalt, this far into a league. Even though the item that you need is one exalt, and you also can't afford to spend more than one exalt, right? So you're just messaging all of these people over and over again. Some of them are AFK, some of them just don't care. They don't want to leave their map, whatever.
Yeah.
And of course, it's up to them. They're playing the game how they want to. There's no restrictions on that. So
I think the most frustrating part for me is that whenever these discussions come up in the dev interviews, the word ground loot always comes up. We can't do that because ground loot. And there's suddenly become this weird ground loot is sacred for some reason. Your best items must come from the ground, and that is like the best place to find gear. Firstly, it gets to a point where statistically finding an upgrade on the ground is just, it's like a 1 in a billion chance. It's not going to happen, or it might happen. But players, if you don't have a light at the end of the tunnel, you're not going to keep grinding for that. So this obsession with it drives me bananas. Like, actually, when I hear ground loot, I'm like, just stop. All right. Firstly, if you want to make ground loot more interesting, make ground loot more interesting. You don't make crafting worse. You say, it's, I don't know. It's like, how do we make pizza better? And it's like, ban hamburgers. What? No, like, put more stuff on the pizza, man. Make it taste better. Make it more interesting. And I mean, playing last Epoch, they've done interesting things with ground loot. You've got like the drop only tier mods. So a lot of the from what I can tell, maybe it's a bit of speculation, but from what I can tell, a lot of the design decisions around giving players agency it comes to this weird, for some weird reason, ground loot is sacred. We must protect it at all costs. We must have no systems that interfere with ground loot. But at the same time, a trade site exists, which undermines it harder than anything else. So it's not that I don't want the trade site. I love the trade site. It's more that the logic doesn't make sense to me. Why can you not say you can find items from the ground? You can find, especially like early on in the campaign, and again, anyone who's played Path of Exile 1, ground loot does matter. It does matter. It does exist. You do use it. It's just that it gets to a point where, again, statistically, it is going to be impossible to find an upgrade on the ground because you need such specific modifiers. And that's where crafting comes in. And that's wonderful. It is wonderful that you can say, I need these very specific things to make this build work, and there are steps I can do to get that. That's great. Why are we trying to get rid of that? Why?
I completely disagree with that. I think GGG's vision here is to fix up the mistakes of PoE1. Where in PoE1, once you reach a certain point in progression, and this point varies a little bit, but usually it's about the time that you're doing Black Star, maybe it's a bit past that, maybe it's the time you're doing Exarch. It's certainly not deep into Endgame.
Mm-hmm.
You remove everything from your loot filter that isn't something that is crafting related.
That's not true.
And
I disagree
when you
with
remove
that.
amethyst, rare amethyst rings are just not loot anymore once you get into at least like well before your first tier 17 map.
Is this on trade or
Rare
SSF?
amethyst, I'm talking in trade.
But again, it's because the trade site exists. That's why you're hiding that stuff. It's because the trade site exists. It's not because of crafting.
Yeah, but people that want a harder game mode without that ability, they play SSF.
But
same as people who want a harder death penalty, they play in hardcore.
But I'm saying that,
like, if you're
you're saying they're trying to correct the mistakes, right? By making
it so that they haven't got this right yet. But the idea is that when a rare item drops and it's unidentified tier 4 or tier 5, this should be like, oh wow, this is loot.
Okay, can I give you a good counter though to this? Sorry, I will let you finish. We still do this in Path of Exile 2, and we don't have a crafting system. Why?
Because we still do what? Sorry, in Path of Exile 2?
We still hide 99% of everything, even though we don't have crafting.
That's because at the moment the loot filters don't allow you to show tier 4 and tier 5 rares. Once that's fixed, if you get a set of boots that are like a low-level base, but they're tier 5 rare, you are absolutely picking them up. And you're going to ID them. And you're going to be like, okay, this is a moment where I might get my breakthrough item. Because if it rolls 2 resists, move speed, and life, then this is going to be no worse than 30% move speed. It's going to be no worse than tier 2 life. It's going to be 2 40% elemental resists. This is going to be a huge upgrade for me. It might not hit, but it's going to be one of those moments. It'd be the equivalent of looting a divine orb in Path of Exile 1. It's like, this is a big step forward in character power.
Is it
enough
though? Is it enough though? Like that upgrade, if you're in tier 15s and you find a pair of boots with 2 resistances, is that enough of an upgrade? Or are you still always going to default to going to the trade site? Because you can get that item, again, that's super special tier 5 double res movement speed item. Are you going to keep playing until you find that, hopefully? Or are you just going to get in the trade site where it costs 2 exalts and it takes you, I don't know, 2 minutes to get that?
That's not going to cost 2 exalts.
Okay, well, okay. It'll cost you, probably it will be quicker to kill monsters,
maybe
to
10.
farm the currency to buy that item. That's what I mean. It'll be much easier to have that deterministic method of just go on the trade site and get it, right? And
but when they get this system right, you won't necessarily get the right item for you. You'll get the right item for someone, and you'll look at that and you'll go, oh, okay, I'm playing a spellcaster, but I just got gloves with tier 1 life, tier 1 attack speed, and 2 premium resistances on it. This isn't for me, but it's amazing, and I'm going to list it for sale. and that's not quite as good as the boots we were talking about. So it might end up only selling for 2 div.
So what
But
about SSF
that's the
in
sort
that?
of thing. But that's SSF. Like SSF is you opting into a game mode where the game deletes every drop that you have no interest in using.
Mm,
That's what you're opting into when you play SSF. I
But-
mean, you've got the option of making a build for them. If you get something like, like if you get a Nimbus in Path of Exile 1, you might go, okay, I wasn't expecting that. I'll make a new build for it. But if you get an Arakali's Fang in Path of Exile 1, it's just deleted. Just not
yeah,
loot.
but I mean that's okay because there's other things become very much more interesting in SSF. For example, in
they do.
Trade League, you might hide those rare amethyst rings because the trade site invalidates them. In SF, you wouldn't. So
You
again,
pick them up from there. Yeah, you might pick them
the
up until you've done 17s.
the thing is that like it to me it always comes back to the trade site. It doesn't come back to crafting. It comes back to the trade site. I don't believe that the thing you're talking about, which is an important experience to have, which is finding interesting items on the ground and identifying them. I think
Where do you think those items on the trade site came from?
someone found them on the ground, right? But
Yeah.
but it's
Someone
the same.
looted a map boss
But
that, a map boss that had a huge amount of rarity and it dropped a tier 3, 4, or 5 unidentified rare.
yeah,
And they ID'd it. And it's like, hey, that's really good. And maybe they slammed it. Maybe they applied a rune to it or whatever.
okay.
But that's where they came from. They've come from the ground.
Yeah, but that's the same in Path of Exile 1, except for some very higher tier items. People do find rare items on the ground in Path of Exile 1 and list them on trade site. It's the trade site on PoE 1.
Day 1 and 2.
It's not just fractured mods or bases. You absolutely do find like decently well-rolled items on the trade site that you might just like bench on an extra modifier and then sell it. Like that does happen. And we have a crafting
I know because
system.
I mass produced those items in PoE 1 by doing ROG books a lot.
Yeah.
That's where they come from in PoE 1. It's not like people are like, if you see a a Citrine amulet with Citrine amulet with 4 great mods, 1 serviceable and 1 bad. That hasn't come from an ID scroll. That's come from ROG. Almost always.
I just think like ultimately the game is about like character power progression, and right now that progression is just missing.
Yeah.
Unless you interact with trade.
Yeah.
And
But I think the real problem with that is those specific must-have mods. I think if they fix those, then suddenly it doesn't become like you can go from an item that's 5.5 out of 10 to an item that's 6 out of 10 to an item that's 7 out of 10 by yourself, or you can trade for one that's 7.5 out of 10, but it's going to hurt. It's going to cost.
Oh, Gog, I think you're disconnecting. Oh no, this is the most scuffed podcast ever, but it's kind of cool.
Scuffed, I can't believe it.
We lost.
That's hilarious.
Still
not.
I
don't know what's happening.
I really wanted to ask Sirgog, because I know we're on like opposite sides of this, but why? Again, why is that ground loot experience sacred, where you must find that item on the ground and it must be an upgrade from the ground? Are you back, Sirgog? I heard a rustle. No, he's gone.
I am back.
You're back. Okay.
I'm here.
Okay.
He's back.
Okay. All right. Finish what you were saying, and then I'll follow up.
Yeah. Well, I'm not exactly sure where I dropped out. I think it's that, like I was talking about how a lot of the things that look like they might have been ground loot in Path of Exile 1 have come from various crafting systems like ROG.
Yeah.
And in 1, that's because ground loot gets obsoleted too quickly. In 2, they haven't got it right yet, but if they can fix the problem of some mods being mandatory, like items that don't have those mods are non-loot, and this includes, in Path of Exile 1 and 2, this is movement speed on boots, but in Path of Exile 2, it's pretty much every character's premium weapon mods. If they can fix that issue, then suddenly there's a lot more flexibility of what's good on gear, and that means that having the potential to get a jackpot rare from a monster is there, just like if you play Path of Exile 1 on day 2 or 3, if you go into Heist, not the experimented bases, what's the other ones? The enchanted armaments. They're no longer the separate heists, but those items, they're well rolled and they are often quite good. you often do find loot in those caches that essentially are like a tier 4 rare in PoE2. What I think is missing, I think that map bosses and ACK bosses should drop a tier 2 or higher rare always. They can't do that at the moment because rarity is wrecking things. And then that just gets people used to paying attention when a tiered rare drops. Now, tier 2 is nothing special. 3 is good, though. 4 is great, and 5 is astounding. Still can miss.
I'd like to see more of that, like, guaranteed rare drop type thing in PoE2. Like, for example, when I come up to, like, a rare box, you know, like the little boxes that are, like, magic and rare. I'd like to see, like, a rare... Sometimes I open one of those rare boxes and there's just a ton of garbage dropping. Just like 5 white bases or something.
My brother was sharing last night, and he like juiced up a strong box, and when he finished it, it was quite an arduous process because he's got a crap build. When he finished it after 5 minutes, everything was filtered out, and he was just like,
I wasn't actually talking about strong boxes, but speaking of strong, I was talking about like the little, you know, like the little rare and magic chests that spawn all over the place. But speaking of strong boxes, though, that's a good topic. Because obviously they did add a bunch of this stuff. They added like Rogue Exiles, Wisps, strong boxes. And
how fun is that
strong
Beetle
boxes
strong box?
Yeah, strong boxes, I was going to say, are actually really fun. I still think normal strong boxes, the non-unique ones, have got a bit of a way to go. They're still like, for example, I can open a strong box, get frozen, and no monsters spawn. Until I'm unfrozen. Like, what's the point of that mod?
That's
but
funny.
still, unique strong boxes, they really, really nailed that. I want to see more of those. They are so good. All of them are good. All the ones that I found anyway are good. I found the one that you pay gold for. I think I found that 3 times, and that one is always really fun. The beetle that like gets up, like Gog was saying, and walks off. You know, that's the first time I clicked on that. I was actually like, "What is going on?" It just stood up and walked off. Like that's so cool. And then the one with that keeps like spawning the rare over and over again. Yeah, I think those strong boxes, they really, really nailed that. That's really fun. Like base strong boxes, non-unique ones need to be looked at a bit more. The loot needs to be checked, and also like they really missed the mark on how some of those mods work. Like for example, the freeze. But yeah, strong boxes are good. Wisps missed the mark because the loot's bad. But I think if they fix the loot, maybe they'll be okay.
I like the encounters when I saw the Arbiter wave phase in the middle of my map with all the running. I was like, "Oh my god, what's happening?" It was crazy. I really like those.
Yeah. The wisp. Yeah, exactly. As chat's saying, wisps like the loot's probably getting buffed this week. Hopefully they meet that, because that's one of those things that, again, that's the thing where I'm like, okay, this patch, you know, they marketed the wisps and the huntress as like they were like top of the board, you know, for this patch. And then the loot is just not there. Like, that's the whole point of that mechanic, is that it buffs up the monster, and it's supposed to be this really rewarding thing when you beat this like boss-like being in the map, right? And then it just drops nothing. So that is something that they missed. Rogue Exiles, I haven't spec'd into them on the tree, so I can't really speak much about them in terms of like investing into them. But for the ones that I have found in the map, they've been a bit hit and miss, I would say, overall. Like sometimes it's felt like it's worth engaging with Rogue Exile, and sometimes it's not. I've had a few that have dropped some unique items, because they're like displayed under their health bar when they're actually equipped with a unique. And then I've had quite a few that haven't had any unique, so they just drop like mostly they just drop a bunch of magic items and maybe a rare or two. But
how do you feel like engaging them? Have they been difficult to your builds, or like kind of pushovers? All the ones that I've found, I don't have I'm playing Lightning Spear, but it's not a good Lightning Spear build. Okay, it's self-made. I melt them really fast with Lightning Spear, Tempest, or Primal Strikes. Like, they just die. All the ones that I've encountered, I've been shocked, because I thought like proper boss battles, and I don't know if I just have found really weak ones so far.
No, I've killed most of the ones that I found really quickly. There was only one that I found, and I think I was playing. I ever had like a weak phase of a build that I was playing. I can't remember what build I was playing at the time, but it was the Rogue Exile that just I don't know if more of them do this, but there was one that just constantly uses health potion over and over again. just like
What?
constantly using his health potion, and it's like it goes down to like 20%, and then it's like back up to 80%. It goes down to 20%, and he keeps using health potion. So
I
that's
thought they had a limited number of uses on that. I hadn't noticed them spamming it.
yeah. So that's
Sure.
I saw that one once, and that was in, I want to say that was like Cruel Act 2 or something like that.
Oh goodness.
And yeah, other than that, the ones that I found in maps have just died in like 3 seconds or something like that. They just insta die.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think the
pretty much.
thing with all these systems that is, I think, very relieving is that there is a lot of potential for them to be excellent. And it's, I don't think it's going to take a lot of work. It's just going to take a lot of balancing and stuff. Where wisps currently are so obviously undertuned, where you're not really interested in doing them. They could very easily make them exciting by just improving the loot. Same with like rogue exiles. Same with strong boxes. I mean, like you said, they've already improved strong boxes. But fundamentally, all these systems, rod crafting, recombinators, exiles, wisps, all these systems could be good very, very quickly. But it's just the balance that's way off, that kind of disincentivizes you to engage with them. Like Expedition, when you realize rod crafting is really bad, or recombinating is strong, but it's maybe a bit of a tedious process, you feel disincentivized to do it. But if those systems were better, you immediately feel like, I want to grind some Expedition and like really farm up and then do some rod crafting. So I hope they can get there. But currently it feels like they're very, very cautious of giving too much, but it feels like they are really, really like too worried, where you're obviously getting nothing. Again, it comes to like, did anyone play this in maps? Like, did anyone do wisps in maps? Because you should have been able to tell very quickly that these things are super undertuned. And what are you worried about? Are you worried about going too far and then having to pull back, or?
I think they are overly cautious
they're
with a lot of
so
things
scared.
in Path of Exile too. I think they need to be a little bit more open to just like making big changes, because they just maybe now they can't even do it, right? Because they already said that they realized pretty quickly that the backlash from like nerfing builds in early access, like patch 0.1, was so dramatic that they basically decided that they weren't going to do that anymore. And in a way, this kind of ties into that, because even though, like, in my opinion, and I think I said this in the feedback video that I made, like, the Huntress, Spears, Wisps, all that stuff should have come in really strong, right? It should have come in really strong. They already know that the majority of players in this patch are going to play Huntress. They're gonna play. They want to play Spears. They want to play the new thing. You know, they want that experience to be a good one, right? It doesn't really matter if this is slightly stronger than everything else. And in a way, like, you know, obviously spear skills did end up being quite strong. Some of them were bugged, in fact, and just, you know, and others weren't and felt kind of bad, especially in early game. And then it's like same with the wisps. Like, I want to see like this loot explosion, you know, like I want to see some loot coming out of that boss when I kill it. Like it takes as long. Some of those bosses are as tanky as like 3 rares, right? Like they're suddenly they're suddenly really tanky. Like add that mechanic into the game, have it come in strong so that loot is good, you know, in that first iteration of it, because people want to interact with it, they want to play with it. And if it's the case that you need to pull that power back in the next patch, do it, right?
Yeah.
Instead, what they did is they added this new mechanic, this wisp mechanic, that people thought it was going to be like this big loot explosion. It wasn't, and then people were like, "Well, that's crap. I'm not even going to interact with that in any maps where I see the wisp. I'm just going to ignore it," which is that's what I was doing. I don't know if you guys were doing that as well. I just see a wisp in the map and I'm like, whatever.
Yeah.
I'll just leave it because it does nothing. Yeah, like that should be an exciting experience. You see a wisp in a map, you're like, oh yeah, you know, that's gonna be,
yeah, like
it's a fun interaction. Like this monster, you know, that's exactly what they were going for as well with like the combination of rare mods on rare monsters. Like this monster has 3 different rare mods, they're all already interacting with each other. Now you got this wisp coming in and adding new abilities, and it's faster, and that's exactly what they were going for with that.
Yeah.
So you've got the offensive, like the combat type thing going on, but you don't have the reward. And if there's, as we know in an ARPG, if there's no reward, people are not going to interact with the mechanic.
Yep.
Right. So
yeah, and that's the
I
case
think
with
that
a
they
lot
got
of it.
that completely the wrong way around. Right. Like if Wisps came into the game and they were too easy, but they were rewarding, it would be much more well received. Then they can then in the next patch make them a bit more difficult, keep the rewards up there, maybe even drop the rewards slightly. But as long as people have that in their head that this is something that I actually want to interact with, I think they would be more forgiving, even if the loot was slightly nerfed.
Yeah. Now Wisp, might be in a rough place right now. What do you guys feel about boss fights now in Endgame? Are you feeling that they're rewarding a more enjoyable part of maps now, or are they also less? I've seen reports of people saying like bosses aren't necessarily dropping that much loot in Endgame. I've had good experiences so far, but I'm tier 7 maps right now, so
there's nothing that differentiates them from a rare monster, in my opinion. Nothing special drops from it. It's just like a strong rare, and I think they really need to start injecting those types of rewards that are, there's some level of what you're gonna get, but obviously not exactly what you're gonna get. Like when you kill a boss, like Gog said, it drops 3 tier 5 items or something, and then you could even make them harder because people are like, man, like I know I'm gonna get this cool thing. I'm willing to die for it. And same with Wisps, crank up the drops and then also make them harder. So I hope
want to pitch something that I think would be great on map bosses, and that is like having some sort of map boss exclusive unique that's tied to either tied to a specific boss or even tied to a biome. It's like, okay, this would be something you could somewhat target farm. Be like, okay, go run bosses in grassland tier maps, and maybe there's a 2% chance to get this specific unique. Now, ultimately in Trade League, that's very quickly going to be oversupplied. It's going to be worthless. But for a short period of time, it'll be really exciting. And, we've obviously already got this with the Pinnacles. Like, Moroya Invictus is genuinely something people want. There's a bunch of those things that are the high drop rate items from Pinnacle bosses that people genuinely want.
Yeah, well, I think the biome system overall is a pretty good system. They should be utilizing it more. Right now we have that one node on the tree that gives you increased drop chance for different things based on the biome that you're in, and that is something that they can utilize a lot more in the game, because the whole idea of that kind of open exploration mapping system is that you can have those different biomes and make them feel very distinct and different when you're in one of them. Like I'm in this biome and now I'm focused on farming this one particular thing. Maybe even your whole like build and your atlas is focused on finding and farming those biomes, right? That's a way that they can actually utilize that whole atlas progression system, making those things, those biomes, exciting to find for your build, and then rewarding in that kind of way is a good idea. Because if you don't have that, if the biomes are not distinctly separate, what's the point in having this whole like separated kind of different biomes and things like that? That I think that is a really good idea, having different drops. Obviously they are kind of trying to do that a little bit with that one node, but that would be a nice way to do that.
Yeah, they need to be less scared of giving players stuff, and the backlash for the respec stuff, which seems to have informed their stance on mid-league nerfs, that I don't remember that being like that bad. Most of the frustration seems to come with them refusing to give players free respecs, which why not? Why? It's early access. Why not? Just do it.
That's the response that I think I've only seen them respond to it maybe once or twice, and then it's not really brought up. Regards to this anymore. It was they don't want to set player expectations to be, that I know, and we already discussed this, that you can just respec almost freely or cheaply, right? I know. I see Dreamcore going like, oh my god.
Oh, it's actually baffling. Like, how can you not just have some red text on the screen that just says respecs are free
Exactly.
during early access?
I-
Like, we're balancing the game, whatever. Like,
I mean, you
people
do need to
signed
get
up
a
for
sense
this,
of
right?
whether the prices are right on respecs, but that's a separate
I
problem,
agree.
and that didn't need to be done in 010.
Yeah.
That could have been something that they say, okay, week 8, we're going to be moving to no longer free respecs. And
Yeah.
you can also put a quite limited free respec in as well. Like you could say free respec by talking to this NPC, but it's on a 72-hour real-world time cooldown.
Yeah,
Ah.
or
that
you could
stops
just
a lot of
you
the-
could just be like, here's a giant patch that's come out.
Yeah.
Everyone gets one free respec.
There you go.
Yeah,
Like they do
right?
Yeah,
in standard.
Like that.
Yeah.
That's it.
because I
Like,
will
it's
say
just
that actually, like when there's a situation where you can respec for free for an extended period, that is actually really bad gameplay-wise. It becomes the min-maxing thing to do to respec all the time, and like I've seen how miserable that was in World of Warcraft back when they used to have negligible cost respecs, and it was just you'd be bouncing between like different fights, you'd be changing around everything, and it wasn't fun there. And they had something vaguely similar in 1.1 in Path of Exile 1, where Atzeri was miles harder than anything that's ever existed since in the game. And the Uber Atzeri fight, because like Atzeri was probably harder than tier 17 bosses are now, regular Atzeri in 1.1. And Uber Atzeri was 10 tiers higher. So you're talking something that took 11 days for anyone to beat in permanent standard. It was that hard. Nothing like that has existed since. But Uber Atzeri, the solution people had to beating her was abusing respecs. They'd go in, they'd clear the first bosses in one form, then they would portal out, they would respec their character, they would abuse snapshotting with various mechanics that existed then, and then they would portal back in with a different build that countered Atzeri herself. And this was the only way that you could beat what was essentially the final boss of the game at this point. People found other ways later, but this was the sort of thing that was not fun at all. You're spending like more time respecing your character than fighting monsters. And that's what happens if you don't have limits on it. But that said, if the limit's too high, and they were in 0.1 day one, then you end up with different problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's good ways to do it.
Yeah. I thought Mathel killed her with pure skill. Did he abuse some of this respecking stuff, Sirgog? Do you know the lore?
Mathel wasn't first, I don't think.
He was. I thought he was first. Oh. Ooh. Okay.
It was crazy. Like the strategies that were used early on, the snapshotting, it was absolutely crazy, the stuff that was done. But just because player power was so much lower in PoE1, actually Uber Atzeri was easier than she is now. She's been given, I think, times 5 hit points on what she originally had. Or was it times 4.75? All the bosses got in 3.9. So she's been made harder since, but just the gear was so bad.
Oh my
and
lord.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was absolutely massive. But the amount of power creep since then has been off the charts.
I think Uber Atzeri's still a great boss to this day. Like, actually, just a great boss overall.
Very well designed. Very well designed. I'm curious, you guys. Arbiter of Ash. I know last time we spoke, I know Dreamcore. I don't think you had fought Arbiter before. Have you done it yet?
Yeah, I fought him, but not in this season. I fought him in standard in the previous season. Yeah.
Okay. I was gonna ask everybody if they progressed, because I know you said you hit tier 15s, Dreamcore, Lolcohol. Sirgog, not sure about you. How does that whole progression feel like this season? The whole, going through the nexuses of corruption, and then finding the citadels, and eventually fighting Arbiter. Is that a more smooth experience? Or
I don't think they've got the numbers right. I think it's too much exploration early on.
There's a weird push-pull with the nexuses, right? Where you kind of feel like you want to stay in the tower range, but also go explore at the same time. I sort of felt that.
Yeah.
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 There's
I
also
think
like
it's
this
a good-
interesting thing where like, do you actually just immediately seek out all the corrupted nexus, or do you, hang back and farm some of the cleanse stuff? Because some of the I
Yep.
had one map that dropped 2 fracturing orbs in a single map, right, which was actually kind of crazy. So that some of those maps can be really quite rewarding, and obviously that they are trying to make that kind of decision making there, where like you can hang back, and if you're playing, SSF or even in Trade League, like you can sell those fracturing orbs, right, for currency, or make use of them to try and craft something better than you have right now. But yeah, the progression of the Atlas is definitely a massive improvement from 0.1, because like just do this many tier whatever, then do this many tier, like that was just what even was that? That was so bare bones, it was crazy. I definitely prefer the like seeking out the corrupted maps, and I think it's I kind of like the new monsters as well that they added to the maps. Like those giant like corrupted the big like abomination things that are just like crawling along.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they must be
a lot of that stuff.
Deadly.
Yeah, they
Cool.
can be,
Yeah.
hey. But I would say that there's a way they could make a bit more variety. So what if your first point is seek out a corrupted nexus and clear it, right? And then the next point is clear 10 or clear 8 cleanse maps. And then after that, it's like find a tower and use a tablet on it. There's another 2 points. And then it's like run this and that. So I think there's a way that they can integrate it and streamline it so that all these systems function and they're not like competing with each other. I do understand that you do want to have people make decisions of like, do I want to search the Atlas, or do I want to go find all the nexus, the corrupted nexus? But I think there is a way that you can integrate it in a really interesting way. And I think that the foundation of the Atlas, I think, is actually really good. I think it's got a ton of potential. I think just the current mechanics and implementation of some of the systems are a little bit weird. So it could be like, I don't know, find a tower and put a boss tablet in it. Here's a boss tablet, and go kill like 4 bosses. That just have a little bit of different stuff here and there.
Yeah, I gotta say I have very much enjoyed the actual gameplay aspects of Endgame now. Like I thoroughly enjoy. I'm a weirdo. I like the campaign. I like the gameplay of Endgame as well. The boss fights in the towers have especially been treats for me. Thought they were pretty cool. I fought the Chimera, I fought the witches, and I fought the Scorpion. The Chimera shocked me because it felt almost like a Brutus moment. Because I was just walking and I was like, oh, okay, the stairs, there's an area up there, right? And he just drops down from on high on you. Oh my God, what is this? This is crazy. This is very fun. So I feel like that is a just massive improvement over the old Endgame. And I think it's that same point of discussion, I think, that is threaded throughout this whole talk. It's just they are very afraid to put certain types of power in the player's hands. And I feel that inhibits the progress or the fun of a lot of people. That's like the only, to me right now, the only detrimental factor. I think everything else feels so much better, especially compared to point 1 that I had critiques about. And then the game's foundation's very solid. I love how meaty all the skills feel, the movement. Just after playing, and maybe we can talk about this briefly. I think Lolcohol, you might be the only one who's played it, unless we have some secret players among us. After playing like all the way through last Epoch's campaign, playing the game for a bit, I came back to PoE2 thinking like, okay, let's try it out, right? I was having fun in last Epoch. I really like the items. I know it's the whole Discord. Oh, it's too easy. Yeah, it's okay. It's basically like Path of Exile 1. That's what ARPGs typically feel like. I think people may have already forgotten this, but I'm playing PoE2. But then when I came back to PoE2, I was just shocked at how much better everything felt gameplay wise. Obviously, there's all the problems that I've talked about with items and everything, but playing the actual game, looking at the monsters, fighting the bosses, it all just felt so much more smooth to me, and it even feels like more polished. I know that might be weird to say, but like with all of its design issues, PoE2 feels like a much more polished game than many other games that I've tried and played.
Yeah,
Like
I agree.
when you talk to Last Epoch, your game momentarily freezes, and it's very jarring, you know. And something as simple as that, you know, in PoE2, yep, it's just snappy, like it responds to you, and I like that.
I agree.
I don't know if you have those thoughts. I know you've been blasted.
Well, like
visually,
and in terms of animations, like PoE2 is way ahead in my opinion. But and also, Last Epoch, it has been really fun. But I can just tell it's got a Diablo 3-ish feeling about it, where it's really fun. It has some really cool systems, but I can tell it's the kind of game I'm probably not going to play for more than a week, and that's fine. That is totally fine. I don't think every ARPG needs to be like, I am now, like quitting my job to stream this. You know, you don't need to have every game be your entire life. So that's fine. But I do prefer the pacing of Path of Exile, where you're not like you're not like God mode from the beginning, and yeah, the combat, the weight of the animation stuff, I far prefer in Path of Exile. But Last Epoch, such a good refresher, and there's a lot of systems in that game. They almost have the opposite problem of GGG right now, where they are not scared of giving you loot or letting you have fun or like finding the overpowered thing. They're just like throwing it at you constantly, to the point that it's like actually so much they have to stop and sit there with the loot filter and be like, please, like hide all these exalted items. I can't handle it. So they're the opposite side of the spectrum, but they're not scared of letting players have agency and control and fun and just like being too strong sometimes. But
Well, that being too strong is the reason that I think Last Epoch is a fantastic game for 40 to 50 hours.
exactly.
After which I walk from it, which is good. Like I feel like I paid 52 Australian, I think it was, for the game, and I feel like I got very good value from that for the time that I've played it. I played through to early corrupted monoliths once, and then through to middle non-corrupted monoliths once in 2 different times. So it's probably 100 hours total. No, less than 100, probably 80 hours total. 50 when I went in blind, unguided, got to corrupted monoliths, and then 30 when I went in with a guide. And it's really good. I might play 02. I might play, what is it called, Release 2, the Tombs of the Erased, but I haven't had a chance to yet. But it is really clear from all of their loot systems, their approach is, we want you to have a great 40 hours and then to be finished, because you hit a point where you've got everything.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that is currently what GGG is so scared of, is the Diablo 3, where it's, you are level 70 within 3 hours, and then you have your like full set within not even 3 hours. What am I talking about? Like an hour, okay? So there's I think they're really scared of that. They want you playing this game for like a month or a month and a half, but they've just got the balance super wrong right now, where it's like everything is so restrictive, everything is so stingy, everything is like so it's just like cheap that, okay, not cheap, sorry, restrictive and stingy, I would say, is that it's having the opposite experience, where people are like, do you know what, I actually don't want to play this because there's no light at the end of the tunnel, and it's frustrating. It's tedious.
See, I find that for me, it's that the first 40 hours of Last Epoch is fun because you're making rapid progress, but then I stop having fun because I've made all the progress I need. Whereas if I play Path of Exile 1 or 2 for that matter, there are still achievable but big goals to chase at that point. And that's the difference between the two games. That doesn't make one of them better than the other. It does mean, though, that if you're someone that can't put in 100 hours in a 13-hour league cycle, then I would say Last Epoch's the superior game. Whereas if you can put in 100 hours in a league cycle, then one of Path of Exile 1 or Path of Exile 2 is going to be better for you than Last Epoch. Although Last Epoch is good enough that it's worth trying.
100%.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, quite fun. Yeah, we're shouting at you, Dreamcore, by the way. That's what we're shouting at.
Yeah, I still haven't played Last Epoch, but I will say that I'm very happy that the game is having a successful period, because I think any kind of progress like that in the ARPG space is going to be good for everything, right?
100%.
So I'm really happy that they. I mean, I know that it took them a long time to get this patch out, and the fact that it's been such a success is really good for the scene overall.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I will say that the thing that Lolcohol was talking about how, like, you know, Ellie give you a lot of tools and a lot of kind of power, you know, player power very early on. It is a slippery slope, right? Between that's kind of what they're going for there. One of them is at risk of giving you too much power to the point where you just, you know, you become way too powerful way too quickly, and you limit the amount of time that a player is going to have fun in that game. And the other one is not giving you enough power to the point where you actually also limit the player in terms of how much time they have in playing the game and having fun, because they actually get burned out really quickly on getting that power, right? So one side, it's kind of the extreme of both ends there. So yeah, I mean, I can't really speak much about Last Epoch, but I can say that for PoE2, it does feel like it's too much the other way at the moment.
The game that got it perfect, I'm sorry to say it, Path of Exile 1. They nailed that. They've got the perfect...
Actually, yeah, because you feel like you can always progress, and you never really feel like your character's done until you are very, very deep into the end game, right?
Yeah.
I think one has a couple of problems there, though. Like, the danger is hidden in the game. Like, you have this thing where for a whole period of time, you had the sort of, you might say, the veteran player only endgame was here 11 to 15 maps. 16s didn't exist at the time. Casual player endgame was tier 1 to 5 maps, and maybe 6, 7, 8, 9, and maybe 10. And there was a clear delineation. Like, you're a casual player, you're beating tier 5 maps, you've got a clear path of progress. It's go to 6s, go to 7s, get better gear until you can do that. Improve your build until you can do that. Nowadays, in Path of Exile 1, the casual player endgame is tier 16s without increased effective map modifiers and running 4 mod rare maps, mostly 4 mods. The veteran player endgame is alternating between 6 mod tier 17s and 8 mod tier 16s with a whole bunch of increased map modifier effect. And the difference between the two is just, it's hidden. It's just that it means that people who are at the more casual end, they end up accidentally speccing into things like the invasive adversaries cluster. Like, the number of people that get one shot time and time again because their character is not powerful enough to deal with the invasive adversaries cluster in tier 16 maps at the north end of the Path of Exile 1 passive tree. Like, this is, every veteran player takes it because it's the best 4 points on the Atlas. You know, 9% map mod effect and 10% more packs, and those new packs are all tier 17 exclusives. But it's hidden danger. There's also other hidden danger that's less popular, like Seance. 5 rare monsters in the map are ghosted. The other ones, the Rogue Exile support, a bunch of this sort of stuff that's hidden. And so where I think, like, that's something I think is a real problem with Path of Exile 1, because they made that design decision to shove everyone into tier 16s. Not a day one casual player, but a casual player will pretty quickly get to the point that they're doing Elk and Goat 16s. Maybe Elk can go with common scarabs.
But is that like a design problem, or is that because that's going back to the same point again of rewarding knowledge, right? Like, if you have the knowledge of how dangerous those things are, like I'm not clicking those things in hardcore, for example, right? As long as I know that my character is in danger of being one shot by those packs. So that is absolutely a knowledge issue.
That's because you know not to. Whereas
yeah, exactly. But what I'm saying is, like, I think the game should have things that reward you for having knowledge.
Absolutely. That is skill. Unless you're Ben and doing your Uber Exarch balls and dodging it perfectly, knowledge is skill in Path of Exile. When you know stuff, you are better at the game, and you should feel that.
Here's the thing, right? If, let's say that you're attempting to learn Uber Exarch and you fail the balls,
Okay.
What is your conclusion? Why did I die? Okay. If you are just looking at it at the first level, I took a hit from that ball.
Mhm.
If you're looking at it at the second level, you might say, okay, I was disoriented because I just frost blinked. I frost blinked. That meant that I didn't really have a good sense of where the balls were, and ultimately the frost blink that took place 1.6 seconds before death was the indirect cause of death. The direct cause was being hit by an Exarch ball. So you can work that out. But the key thing is all the precipitating events that cause that death took place in the 5 seconds before the death. Contrast this to someone who specs invasive adversaries on their atlas, who specs the chiseled perfection node on their atlas, then goes and runs 25 maps with only 2 deaths. Then they 6 portal fail the next one. Why did they 6 portal fail that next one? It's because of a decision they made 4 play sessions and 6 in-game hours ago. That, I think, is the problem
Sure, so
that Path of
you're saying
Exile
it's
1 has
obscured.
gotten into.
So you're
Yeah.
saying
Sorry?
that like you're saying that it's obscured. The reason why they died is obscured to them.
Correct, yeah. And
Yeah.
this was really
That-
bad. This was worse in the past with Wrath of the Cosmos version 1, when it was 25% increased damage per Exarch altar that you'd clicked in that map.
Yeah.
And that was causing players to take, you would complete 6 maps without a problem because you didn't get a lot of Exarch altars. Then you'd run one that had 7, and suddenly you've got 175% increased damage. You lose 6 portals. You lose 60% of your XP for a level. It feels like a crushing setback. And the problem is that the precipitating cause was hours ago. So you don't realize what it was. Path of Exile 1 has a bunch of that, and that's been because they've shoved everyone into 16s. When people were in lower tiers, you would say, okay, I tried a tier 12. My character's not strong enough yet, and that's the reason I 6 portal failed that 12. And that's fine because it's the same map.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's a problem
I will
that
say that I
makes
don't
one
think
harder to
that's
approach.
necessarily a problem though, overall. Like it's it's very very late into Endgame. The type of players that are going to be interacting with that kind of stuff are people that are a lot more dedicated overall. But I will. There is a lot of things like that in the game. Like for example, I remember I was playing. This was one of my first ever leagues playing hardcore. It must have been, I don't know, maybe patch 315, something like that. Because I think first league I played hardcore was 314, and I remember I was playing a Righteous Fire Juggernaut. I was extremely tanky. I had 8,000 life. Right, I was just a mega tank. Right, I entered a tier 10 Death and Taxes map. Tier 10. Right, this character was free farming tier 16s like no tomorrow. This was before tier 17s were added to the game. Couldn't die to anything, right? Tier 10 Death and Taxes. I thought I can't possibly die in this map, right? No shot. And I died. I died to the boss because of the like lightning spell that it uses, which stacks up over time, right? Because it uses a bunch of like Valve skills. It stacks up, and if you don't move, you get shotgunned by all these lightning skills all at once. And that 8,000 life character that had like 87% lightning resistance as well, died to a tier 10 Death and Taxes map boss, right? That was a level 95 Righteous Fire Juggernaut, 8,000 life, 87% lightning res, right? So that's one of those things where it's a you live and learn situation, right? Because had I not ever done that thing, I would never know that boss is deadly, right? Or like has the potential to kill me. I would always go on from that point and think this is a joke, right? But that one experience is enough to kind of, and I've had a lot of things like that, right? That's just one that sticks out to me because it was absolutely fascinating to me. When I died, I didn't feel any ounce of like regret or anything like that or whatever, right? This was level 95 hardcore character. I didn't feel bad or anything because I just learned super valuable knowledge that boss can actually kill me. Like the amount of damage that must have done. Think about it. That was ridiculous damage. Like insane damage. So that's what I'm talking about when I'm saying like a knowledge thing, because you just have to have those experiences to even know. And I think even though what you say is true, that it is obscured with those nodes, like you probably will start to recognize at some point that it is these particular monsters that are like doing something to me. Like these monsters that I don't normally see in my maps. Now I see them, and then you like, okay, they're tier 17 monsters. They're like doing these particular attacks that do insane damage or whatever it is. Like eventually something's going to start clicking, and I think it is that knowledge thing, right? It's a being rewarded for knowledge.
Yeah.
I like stuff in games too, right? That sort of obscure knowledge that you just learn if you get deep enough into a game. And I think right now, Path of Exile 2, obviously an infant, but something like Path of Exile 1, that's one of the big reasons I love the game. I keep talking about that. I don't have as much knowledge as all of you guys, and I'm constantly learning stuff like that, and it's super fun. Like, I feel like these games, especially PoE1 and PoE2, draw in that sort of player who enjoy learning, and when they fail at something, I mean, maybe some people are going to get frustrated and go complain and not try to sort out what's happening. But I think a lot of players actually do, right? Like Dreamcore, with the Death and Taxes, did you like look up what the hell is this boss doing? How did I die? Or did you just say, okay?
No, I didn't look it up, but I just that's just something that I now know, right? Like I now know that boss can do that damage. Like that's right. Because I've always seen the spells going off, and I've always just rotated around. It's that boss that follows you, the giant scythe. I've always just like rotated around the arena and just killed it. But I thought, okay, I'm just this giant tank. Like there's absolutely no shot. So I just stood there, and that was also through a molten shell as well. Like I was absolute monster tank on that character, and yeah. I
will add one thing, though, that's very counterintuitive there that people may not know, and that's that there's actually not much damage between tier 10 and tier 16 monsters in terms of the amount of damage they do. The biggest difference in damage, the reason that there's such a big spike in danger between 10s and 11s, or partly unique bosses get a lot tankier in 11 plus, but the big...
Oh, Sirgog. Oh, no. Are you back?
Oh, we all...
Oh, I just crangled again.
Yeah.
Between 10s and 11s, map mods get a lot worse, and that's hidden.
Yeah. I mean, if we're talking about PoE1, I do feel like there is a bit of a weird progression going from yellows to reds, and you have to like do the corrupted red maps and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Exiles, the podcast gods are continuing to scuff us. Okay. So I feel like I have one more topic that I'd love to hear about from all of you, and then we can call it a day, okay?
All right.
For the pod at least. Okay. 0.3. Okay? And PoE 3.26, guys. If we don't have another one before, the next big announcement, which maybe is soon, what do you guys think about that? Do you think it's actually going to be end of May? Do you think there's going to be delays? What do you think anything else big is going to happen during this actual patch? Or are they just going to do a few more minor fixes and push it all to 0.3? What do you guys think about like the just overall future of what's happening with PoE? I'm a little skeptical of what's gonna...
I'm actually a little bit concerned about 0.3 because I think if it's the same type of patch as this one, again, with like one class and some endgame changes and stuff, I don't think that's getting them to their destination very quickly, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And ultimately, they're likely to release the game at this point. Like, if they're still going to plan to release it in December of this year, like it's really not going to be anywhere close to a finished product.
I think that would be a big mistake too if they haven't decided on their core design philosophies, right? Bringing in it's going to be a stupid amount of people coming to play. It's going to be free, right? Like, I think a lot of people will get to experience it, and if it's not in that clean, well thought out state where they're not going to make a whole bunch of changes, a weekend or in the next league, I think that'd just be a poor idea. It would. But
yeah. I think for 3.26, we're probably going to... I think it will be in June, right? I think they said they're going to start talking about it in May.
Oh, late May? Is that what they said?
And then we'll probably see the actual release in June. Whether it gets delayed or not, who knows? For me, for 3.26, the only thing I'm really looking for, like they can add the most mediocre league mechanic ever. I just want balance. I want skill balance.
Yes, dude, 100%.
Yeah.
That is, if they miss skill balance on this one, like that is going to irritate a lot of people. I think.
Yep. Change. Update the tree.
Yeah.
Update skills. Like a lot of the new support gems that were added were just so weird and so conditional. Like that's the thing that's a bit worrying to me. Is I think a lot of
I'm talking about PoE1.
You're talking about PoE1? I'm talking about PoE2.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
No, I was talking about PoE1. 3.26. We need skill balance. I don't want to see lightning strike at the top of the board again.
Oh yeah, nerf everything.
We need skill balance big time in PoE1.
Yeah.
But also, like, just to stay on topic, PoE2. Yeah, of course, PoE2 does need balance, but the problem with PoE2's balance, which I already touched on earlier, is that it doesn't really matter if they balance the game again, because we're always going to have these crazy outliers because they're not willing to make those like mid-league changes to be able to actually like fish and test for things, right? Because that's the when you say like this skill is bad, we've buffed it by 50%, then like 1,000 players are like, oh yeah, I want to try that. Then they try it, find out the broken stuff, and then now GGG can see the potential of that skill, right? Whereas if they don't do that, they never see the potential of that skill. Then they buff it 50% in the next big update. And now everyone is playing it in the next big update. Like 60% of players are playing it. Now they can't nerf it for another 3 months. So,
yeah,
even though they do need they need to balance the game, but it's so much harder to balance PoE2 because there's all these moving parts. They're constantly changing like core mechanics and adding these new things in. So
exactly, yeah, yep.
Yeah.
And all of this is why I started out by saying that they made a mistake by adding high tier maps early on. If they hadn't added high tier maps early on, then they could get the balance to a point that it feels fun in tier 10s, and then they could, maybe you feel overpowered, but it's still fun in tier 10s, and then they can go, right, 11s, 12s through 16s, we're going to balance those. We're going to balance the monster stats around what player power actually is, and we'll trim down some of the outliers. Then they'd be in a much better position to have gotten that right. Anyways, in terms of what I want to see, 326, I agree, need to have skill and ascendancy balance. Like, I feel like Trickster is not oppressively good. It is better than the other ascendancies, but it's not oppressively so. The reason it's oppressively so is because it's been better for a year, and that means it needs to be fixed. And Lightning Strike is oppressively good. There's a couple other skills that are too good. There's a bunch of stuff that is like that has potential and could be fun if they make it if they bring it up to the power level of maybe 15% above present day Path of Exile 1 classic Frostblades. So we're not talking Frostblades or Catabasis, we're talking the classic skill gem. That's sort of 15% above that, then a lot of skills would be really playable. 326, I also want to see a few new scarabs added, just things that will shake up endgame farming a bit, and maybe a bit of a shake up of things on the tree. But other than that, I'm not that fussed about the league mechanic. 030, I think we will see a 021, but I think the primary focus of that 021 will be to add new MTX, because they often do a mid-league patch for MTX. That's just, commercial reality. I think like 020 F and G will end up being the biggest patches in terms of gameplay. 030, if it's one class again, then we're just going to have to face the fact that 12 classes is not till third quarter next year.
Oh, yeah.
What they decide to call 1.00 doesn't really matter. The one that will feel like full release is when they hit the 12th class, I reckon.
Right.
Yeah.
And 12 classes and 36 ascendancies. That's going to be when it feels like the game is actually at full release, even if they decide to enable free-to-play before that. The problem is, of course, when they enable free-to-play, I'm dreading the bot cheating issues that we're going to have.
Oh, boy.
Because they also made a change very recently that I'm very apprehensive about.
Yeah, the boss change.
Pinnacle Boss plus 0
Oh no.
is like the best change ever if you're a player whose skill level is at the point where you're trying to learn Pinnacle Bosses plus 0, but you don't stay at that skill level for long. You get better. There is a large group of players that don't get better than that, and they're bot cheats. And they are going to have a field day with that change. I feel like it's something that, like, I don't know. I think people will love it in the short term, but I think it's going to be a real problem once we get to grinding your games as 1.0.0, and they decide to go, all right, we're making it free to play now. We're gonna have Zesh bots. We're gonna have King in the Mist bots, and you're going to have to be competing with those if you're playing in Trade League. So yeah, that's my little rant aside. I think that decision is something that is very hard to walk back, but that it would probably be for the best if they did. And yeah,
See that?
Yeah,
That's
that's why I can't wait for SSF to feel good in PoE2,
Exactly,
man.
right?
Get me out of that stuff, right?
The way that they have Exarch and Eater in PoE1, they should have it like that in PoE2, where it's like first attempt, yeah, okay, you got to do what? One more map to get your retry, just do that PoE2. I think that would be better. Or maybe just your first try has unlimited attempts on each of these bosses. Not you have it set to difficulty 0. Unlimited
that's
try
perfect.
for as long as possible. So,
yep,
maybe
until you beat it, unlimited tries until you've beaten it once.
Yeah, because now we know they have the ability to track how many times your character has killed each boss because of that sweet MTX they added. The scrolls, did you guys see that?
No.
You can see how many times you killed Arbiter, Zesh. Oh, I wish that was just part of the game, but I know they need to make money. But that's so cool. I love character stats like that. I keep track of that stuff in D&D, like how many monsters I've killed and stuff. That'd be cool to have on PoE. Okay, Lolcohol. Your predictions for both. What's up?
I don't know. When did the last PoE 1 league come out? Like July 2014.
July.
I just like new stuff, balance. Just a new league will feel good, man. Just that collective consciousness of everyone playing PoE 1 again. I'm not picky, really. PoE 2, dude, I don't know. I'm hoping. What I want is a defense rework, a tree rework, and a gem rework, and an overall power balance rework. And I don't care if we don't get any more ascendancies or classes or endgame stuff. Balance the tree, give us defenses, give players agency, and rework loot drops for existing systems. Stop adding stuff until you fix what's in the game and figured out why it's bad and make it good, so they can apply that knowledge to any new systems that are added. So that's what I'm hoping. I don't know if we're gonna get it. I would love to speak to Jonathan about just like one thing at a time. I said it at the start, but like, sit down, talk about defenses. Why are they like this? Why is the tree like this? Why are you so interested in having this like hyper conditional combat? And I don't know. I don't know if it'll ever happen, but maybe try if you get in there. I can feed you some questions under the table.
I will take any of your questions.
Yes.
If don't worry about it.
All right.
Hey, we try to do the MOBA pod with Jonathan and Mark. That'd be pretty fun.
Yeah.
Wonder if that would be interesting.
Can you
even someone else?
Yeah, anyone. But if you pitch it, do you like the idea of just doing a deep dive into a couple of topics rather than just a super broad thing? If it's possible.
Yeah, that I did consider reaching out to Jonathan at one point just to like try and get a discussion just on game mechanics, because I think like
I tried to reach out to Harishi and then he moved on.
Then he left.
God,
I was talking.
Because I just think like ultimately, like as much as I enjoy the podcast that we have, like the DM and Ghazi one, the Zizaran recent Zizaran interview, like they're sometimes a little bit too broad, try to cover too much, and they don't really get into the nitty gritty of like what is really going on here. Like you kind of some of the questions that they did get into the main sort of broad bulk of it, but then they didn't like dig. You got to just. I think you do have to really press them on some of these things because otherwise we're not gonna we don't get that info, right? Like there's still so many questions as to like where they want to go with this game.
Oh my god, that is so that's
use your contacts. Talkative try.
People think I won't press on that shit.
it.
Oh, I will. I have a pin now that I've played PoE2 for 4 months now. Let me at them. My god. I will say about like the other devs. Yeah, they're not doing other dev stuff right now because I had a good lineup of 7 devs that were gonna chat after early access release.
Damn.
And it was no more. So
they just because they're just too busy.
Yeah. I think it's more so they want to direct everything to Mark and Jonathan.
Yeah.
I think that's what it sounded like to me. So the thing I would really advise them on, I think DM and Ghazi did send them like the questions beforehand about these mechanics. Usually when I do so as well, like they will prep and ask the people who know, okay, I want to make sure give me the rundown so I can talk at this at length. With these past few interviews, though, it doesn't seem like that is there. It's more so like, we kind of know about that. Or, we'll look into it later, right? Usually, what's really cool to see in these with at least the mechanical questions, right, is they used to go in. Like, they would explain the fundamentals. They'd know the answers. And now it just seems like either maybe they just don't think it's important to chat about. They don't have the knowledge and they don't want to go get the knowledge, right? I'm not quite sure because the DM Ghazi interview, especially, all the mechanical questions were essentially like Mark saying, we're thinking about that. We don't know how we don't want to speak on it because we don't know, right? So maybe they got to. What is the thing that you always have in your emojis? The dev check, Dreamcore, in your
That's right. They need like a couple of people in the room with them who like do know that they can immediately reference for those questions.
Just be like,
I do think there is one complication.
I gotta say that is.
Sorry.
I was just gonna say that is one thing that I used to really like about Chris is that he was openly honest about the fact that like here's something that he doesn't know about.
Yeah.
Like it's just, like yes, the guy had a lot of very good ideas. He also oftentimes didn't understand what the question was really referencing, so he would then, defer to someone else. Like how does this work, or does that work like that? Are they explaining that correctly or whatever? Like that's in a lot of times in these other interviews that Jonathan and Mark have been having, we have this like moment of just they're almost as confused as everyone else is for like 10 seconds. They're like, like, does that work like that? Or did we design that like that? Or, we want a bit more. I want them to just be more. I don't even know how to explain it. When I hear them answering a question, I want them to answer it with full confidence. This is why this is like this. I don't want them to be like, is that like that? And like the amount of times I've heard Jonathan say, why did we design that like that? And then he's looking at Mark, and Mark's like looking at the ceiling. What?
I think one of the things that comes up there, though, is that the game is so big that like no one can know everything. Yep. The number of times that I've been confidently wrong, like, there's times, most of the time, if I don't know something, I know I don't know it. But the times that you don't know that you're wrong about something are really, really bad. And that's happened a bunch, that's happened a bunch in recent times in both Path of Exile games. And I would assume it's exactly the same for Mark and Jonathan as well, especially because they will have played internal betas that have never gone live. And things will have changed since then. And so that's going to really mess things up a lot. They're going to be thinking, maybe Chaos Inoculation does something completely different, like has a weird interaction with poison that we would never think of, because that's the way it was in their mindset for 4 months during the internal betas, and then eventually they changed off that. The other thing I think they've got to be very aware of, that Zizaran interview has, 250,000 views on YouTube. That means it's going to keep getting seen into the future. because of the nature of YouTube, and it represents their positions as of late March 2025, but it's going to get seen in October 2025. It's going to get seen in January 2027. And that's something that's a real pain with the format, unless it's live only, or alternately, maybe live and only kept up for 14 days. And beyond that, you then go, okay, we're going to remove it. You can still have your own transcript of it as long as you mention that it's expired at that point. Or even you could just start it with, this is all about the game as it was in second quarter 2025.
That's a
great point.
That is actually a big. The broader issue there is that I think they're often afraid to take a position on something because they don't want to commit to it for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, for very good reason, because you're going to have cascading effects where you realize this is maybe not the right direction because of this and this and this, and then being held accountable to that, and then being called liars because you changed or whatever. Like, I can 100% understand why they are way more cautious now. And possibly why those interviews of yours, I don't know, Tribe, but maybe after the fallout, they worried like someone will say one thing and then like the whole studio gets held accountable because of that. Like,
that's 100% what it is. They don't want, if anything happens like to the studio or to like the community, they want it to be coming out of their mouths, which is totally right. Because they don't want some clip from one of their developers who's working on like level design, for example, chatting about one particular way that a level works, like being taken out of context and then blowing up on Reddit and pissing people off, right? Because it's a shame. It's a shame because there's a lot of cool people that work on these games and they're really passionate and they know a lot just about how the game is designed. Maybe one day, maybe we'll all get to chat with them, because it would be a good time. It is really interesting because I've chatted privately, and the way that these people look at the games compared to like Jonathan or Mark, let's say like somebody who designs skills and solely skills, is so fascinating, right? Like that's their entire job. They're just sitting there. They're working with the animation teams. They're looking at balance. They're working with the sound design, and there's all these different moving parts. And it would be an awesome discussion one day to have, but maybe in the future when things are less volatile. I do think this chat was very nice. It was very measured, everybody. So awesome. Good work. Because there was a rough patch there. Gog, who we see him. Oh my god.
We got 1 second of Gog.
Oh my god. You know you're there.
He's gone.
Damn it. It was so good.
Shout out. Gog. Awesome. Again, he's just popping. An awesome video just about gaming like reception in general. And he keeps popping in. He's trying to throw me off. And I just thought it was such a wonderful video that I think just represented my thoughts so well about how you can really get caught up in a zeitgeist when people are not happy about the state of things and then just keep ramping up the anger over and over and over again. And we did not do that here today. So good job, you guys. I don't think we did that here today.
Nope.
We did have a lot of technical problems, though, which really sucks. So
we'll stitch it all together.
It is what it is. It is what it is.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
tech issues are fun.
Tech's so fun. I got to go figure out what my power's out. So it is literally beautiful, sunny day outside. Nothing. I don't know why the power's out. No power. So anything else you guys wanted to chat about before we close it out for today?
No, I'm good. I think
that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, one random little question that's completely unrelated to Path of Exile. Any other games you're playing at the moment, other than obviously Last Epoch? Anything outside the ARPG field?
I am playing right now. I'm playing Guild Wars 1 for the first time in a very long time because they're celebrating their 20th anniversary.
Are you going for the cool minis that are now available and everything?
I'm just generally playing the game. Like I'm just enjoying playing the game after such a long time. It's a big nostalgia trip, So I've just been playing that a little bit. I also play a bit of Apex with some friends every now and again. But yeah, Guild Wars 1.
How does it feel? Like 20 years out, Just the game.
So the game obviously has like a lot of things that are a bit awkward, like in terms of playing. But at the same time, it was so far ahead of its time when it released that it's still just a blast to play. Like honestly, like the build, like because if you guys don't know, that was part of Chris Wilson's inspiration for PoE1, like with the skill design and stuff like that, was a bit of Guild Wars 1 in there combined with like card games and things like that. So the buildcraft in Guild Wars 1 is just magical. It's so good for anyone who loves theorycraft and things like that. And if anyone is interested in that, the game is $8 at the moment for all 3 campaigns and an expansion and all of the end stuff. $8.
Yep.
Like that is just an absolute bargain. Bargain bin.
Absolute steal.
Yeah.
Huh. What about you, Sirgog? Have you been playing anything?
I've been playing an indie studio's take on my favorite tabletop RPG, Pathfinder 2nd Edition. And again, it's a ridiculously cheap game, like Dreamcore mentioned there. It's Dawnsbury Days, it's called. It is a very short game. It's a 4 or 5 hour, literally single dev team. But I think it's like 5 American or something like that. And there's an expansion that came out recently. And the existence of the expansion, I'd sort of followed it. And that I was like, all right, I'll finally get the base game now and then go through it. But that's just a few hours. Like it's not it will feel like act 1 of a game. But I went into it knowing that, I knew it was a very short thing. So that's basically been today. I'll probably finish that before I go to bed. And then who knows, tomorrow hopefully I'll have my ISP will be out and I'll fix up the crangling that I've got at the moment.
Awesome.
All right.
Lolcohol, anything else?
I don't know. Lost Epoch, and then I'll figure it out. Dude, it is so weird being a Path of Exile creator right now. I'm trying to.
It is. Dude, okay,
weird.
so I just want to mention something about that actually. Like being a PoE, because obviously I basically only make content about PoE, right? I don't play Last Epoch.
Yeah.
It's only PoE 1 and 2. And I had this like week or two of making videos where all of the videos were performing really poorly compared to what it usually would do in that period. And that's because like the reception to the game was so negative at the time. And I made a video yesterday or the day before, which actually done quite well. And I think generally the reception to the game right now is kind of on a bit of an upwards trend, because I think that a lot of people have stepped out and played The Last Epoch for a bit. Some people are now coming back, like DM has now come back to PoE2, for example. A few other people have started coming back to PoE2. And I think they're also making some people are playing the game for the first time since that immediate like gameplay right on the launch of this patch, which in their mind wasn't good, right? So now they're kind of giving it another check. So I'm hopeful that the game is on a bit of an upwards tick at the moment, and people are going to kind of pick it up and try it again. Because I think they have made a lot of really good changes in the last couple of weeks. Like they made some good emergency changes. They've also thought about some other changes, like they're going to be making a patch to the loot for wisps this week. So hopefully people are going to sort of like test it out again a bit, because I think they have made some good changes in the last couple of weeks.
Dude, I learned Tabula was in PoE2 from your video. I didn't even know it was in PoE2.
That is a crazy item as well in PoE2. Like what complete 180 compared to what it is in PoE1. It's the complete opposite, It is like a crazy endgame item. It's like a min-maxer's dream in PoE2. Like when you have an infinite currency, that is the item you're considering using.
Wild stuff.
Yeah.
Me, games? No, nothing besides PoE2. I'm playing Dad Simulator. We had 5 Easter egg hunts over the weekend, which was pretty wild. We had one here at home. Easter Bunny came and I had to rush my daughters upstairs into her bedroom. Be like, oh, we gotta hide. Do you hear them? And my wife was like thumping down around the stairs. It was really fun. And then we had like one giant one at my parents'. And then we had an adult Easter egg hunt, which was savage and amazing. Oh my gosh. It was adult, like all the older kids who used to hunt, my brother-in-law, my brother, his wife, my wife. We all hunted, and the eggs were in the craziest positions. Like my parents hid the eggs. Oh my gosh. It was so much. I smoked. I got 20 of the 50 eggs or something. So I smoked everybody. It was good. I can just run. That's it. Yeah, nothing besides PoE2. I've been playing less than ever because I've had so much going on, unfortunately. So, and fortunately, I guess. But I've got the week off and I'm chilling, which is nice.
Nice. Are you
Yep,
going to are you going to be streaming and stuff? Are you doing family whatever?
I'm probably just gonna be. I'm chilling with my kids.
Yeah.
We really nice. Like yesterday, we went to 2 different parks. One was at a lake, and we like walked all the way around it. It was beautiful. And then we went to this crazy playground that is 5 minutes from our house. We've never been there, and it was insane. They have like instruments,
Oh.
giant instruments in the park, like xylophones and everything, and you can actually play them. I feel really bad for the neighborhood that lives right next door. That must be but it was super cool. So yeah, just chilling. I'm not gonna lie, you guys, the reception really turned me off, not only I think from like making content, but like playing the game publicly. I don't know, like this might be a streaming thing, like maybe especially like I was talking about it before we started the pod. My fun factor, it's like multiplied by 10 if I just hop on at night after my kids are asleep and I get into Discord with some of my friends who are all playing and loving PoE2. They have the craziest of takes, by the way. This stupid takes. They think loot's fine, currency's fine, everything's fine. Why are you complaining, dude? Crazy takes, I gotta say. Like, oh. But I'm gonna chat with them and I'll play and I just chill for like 45 minutes and I go to bed and maybe do it again the next day. Like I'm taking it literally casually now. I know I've joked about me being a casual before, but like my longest session since launch day has maybe been like 2 hours or something. And I'm just chilling, taking it along, and I'm having a really good time, like with the progress of my character. So, yeah.
All right.
That's where I am.
Sounds good. It feels weird. Feels weird. Feels like we're like 3 months
Doesn't
into a league.
It
but
does. It does
it's
feel really. I gotta
3
say,
weeks.
it's very weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it Dizarin
Yeah.
that did he say like we've been playing this for several weeks now, and it was like 10 days into the patch or something?
Yep.
I think like I'm done. I'm playing last season. Oh my god. Yeah.
I'll say like it has felt a bit like less negative, but it's felt like 3.19 in a way in Path of Exile 1, in that I feel like I've been constantly making videos about panic patches.
Yeah.
The game wasn't in as bad a state as 3.19 day 1 was, although I had fun on day 1 of 3.19 as well. But then you just find it's exhausting dealing with any sort of online discussion of it. That's kind of what prompted me to put out that video about how content creators actually have a financial incentive to push whatever the most popular opinion is at the time and to push it hard. And because it's something I think a lot of people don't realize, that people will say if you put out something the moment that's remotely positive, people will go, oh, you're just a GGG shill, and you're getting money from them to do it, when actually you get money for doing the negative stuff and for hyping it to the max. And that's just the reality of content creation, and saying what's honest is...
Guys, I wish Grinding Your Games would pay me to play their game. They don't do it. Pay all these other guys play their game. You see,
they pay Shroud, dude. They pay Shroud to play the game and talk shit about it.
Come on.
But that makes sense from their perspective because he's got a huge fan base in somewhere else.
Yeah.
No,
to be fair though, in the past they've literally paid PoE1 players to play the game at launch, which just didn't make any sense at all, right? They were literally only going to be playing Path of Exile at launch of the game, but I think they've stopped doing that in recent years.
Smart.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense from their perspective. I mean, they sort of did with that. Was it that Chimera pet in 010 that had that you got for buying 2 subs?
Yeah.
Like, that made, like, I'm very much streaming as a tertiary thing, and that wasn't a trivial amount of money that I got from it. And I'm sure that people that are streaming first made a lot more out of that. That was the one time they've done something that was really substantial that was like a substantial handout for streamers, if you like. But like the logical thing for them to do is to look for games where they think there'd be a significant crossover appeal and try to poach big streamers temporarily for it. That just makes sense.
You know, I've noticed that ArenaNet gets a lot of Path of Exile streamers to go over to Guild Wars. I saw Jung play.
Yeah, Jung was playing. I was like, I was watching that and I was like, this is not going to end well. Like, this is just not the type of game that Jung is going to enjoy, you know. But
oh, okay.
Yeah.
I hear my kids screaming, you guys.
All right.
Despite
catch it, mate.
All right. Thank you all so much for watching, and thank you three for hopping in at this lovely time of day. Okay. Thank you all.
Brilliant.
So
awesome chat.
All right.
See you, mate. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Peace.